Plague-ravaged Victorian London hides a deadly secret. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson uncover the Order of the Cross, a shadowy cabal of lords, criminals, and killers guarding centuries-old crimes that could topple empires. Armed with cryptic, keys, riddles, and a traitor's proof, they race through fog-choked streets and hidden vaults, dodging bullets and blades. But as the Order's web unravels, a mysterious woman, Miss V, leads them deeper into danger. Will they expose the truth, or will London's darkest secrets bury them alive? The clock is ticking. Chapter 1. The Cryptic Letter. The fog clung to London like a damp, gray blanket, wrapping Baker Street in a shroud so thick you could barely see the gas lamps flickering across the cobblestones. It was late, past 10 o'clock, and the air carried a chill that seeped into your bones. Inside 221B, the fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm shadows on the walls. Sherlock Holmes sat in his armchair, his long fingers steepled under his chin, eyes half closed as if he were listening to the city's heartbeat. I, Dr. John Watson, sat across from him, scribbling notes in my journal, trying to make sense of our last case, a messy affair involving a stolen necklace and a butler with a gambling problem. The room was quiet, save for the pop of the fire and the occasional clatter of a carriage outside. Holmes hadn't spoken for nearly an hour, which wasn't unusual when he was deep in thought. I'd grown used to his silences, though they still made me restless. I glanced at him, his sharp face lit by the glow, and wondered what puzzle was turning in that brilliant mind of his. A sharp knock at the door broke the stillness. I startled, nearly dropping my pen. Holmes didn't move, but his eyes flicked open, bright and alert. "Mrs. Hudson," he murmured, "is not expecting callers at this hour. Interesting." Before I could respond, the door creaked open, and Mrs. Hudson poked her head in, her face a mix of worry and annoyance. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, there's a boy here. Says he's got a letter for you. Won't give it to me, insists it's for your hands only. Cheeky little thing if you ask me." Holmes's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Send him up, Mrs. Hudson. Let's see what this midnight messenger brings." She huffed but disappeared, and a moment later, a scrawny boy shuffled into the room. He couldn't have been older than 12, with a cap pulled low over his eyes and a coat 2 sizes too big. His boots were caked with mud and his hands trembled as he clutched a sealed envelope. He didn't look at me, only at Holmes, like a mouse staring at a hawk. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" the boy asked, voice cracking. "I am he," Holmes said, leaning forward. "And you are?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he thrust the envelope forward, holding it out like it might burn him. Holmes took it, his movements slow and deliberate, as if handling a fragile clue. The boy didn't wait for questions. He turned and bolted down the stairs, his footsteps echoing before the front door slammed shut. "Well," I said, setting my journal aside. "That was dramatic." Holmes didn't reply. He was already studying the envelope, turning it over in his hands. It was plain, no crest or monogram, sealed with red wax that bore no mark. His eyes narrowed as he held it to the light, then sniffed the paper. Cheap stock, slightly damp, carried through the fog, likely from the East End, no scent of perfume or tobacco. Our messenger was no gentleman's servant. He slit the envelope open with a letter knife and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I leaned closer, curious despite myself. The writing was neat but hurried, in black ink with no signature. Holmes read it silently, his face unreadable, then passed it to me. The letter read, "Mr. Holmes, you are the only one who can unlock what is hidden. Beneath the city, a vault holds secrets that could shake London to its core. Find it before they do. Start at the place where the ravens weep. Trust no one. Burn this when you are done." I read it twice, my heart picking up speed. Ravens weep? A vault? What does it mean, Holmes? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took the letter, held it over the fire, and let it catch. The flames devoured the paper, curling it into ash. "A precaution," he said, brushing his hands together. "Though I doubt it was necessary. The sender knows their business. I frowned. You're not seriously taking this seriously, are you? It sounds like a prank. Some crackpot with too much time on their hands. Holmes's eyes gleamed. A prank, Watson? Perhaps. But consider, a boy, clearly frightened, delivers a letter in the dead of night, with no reward or explanation. The message is vague yet specific, cryptic yet urgent. It speaks of a vault, specific enough to intrigue, vague enough to protect. This is no idle jest. Someone wants my attention, and they have it. I leaned back, skeptical but hooked. Holmes had a way of making even the wildest ideas sound plausible. So what's this about ravens weeping? Sounds like poetry, not a clue. Holmes stood and began pacing, his dressing gown swishing behind him. Poetry, yes, but poetry with purpose. Ravens are tied to London's history. Think of the Tower of London where the ravens are kept. Legend says if they leave, the kingdom falls. Weep suggests a place of loss or sorrow. A church, perhaps, or a monument. We need more to narrow it down. He stopped by the window, peering into the fog. The vault, though, that's the heart of it. A hidden place, holding secrets worth killing for if the warning to trust no one is any guide. This is no ordinary case, Watson. This is a challenge. I felt a familiar thrill, the kind that always came when Holmes latched onto a mystery. So what's our next step? He turned, his smile sharp as a blade. We wait. The sender will make their next move. For now, we prepare. Tomorrow, we visit the tower. If the ravens are weeping, we'll find out why. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The letter's words stuck in my mind like a song you can't shake. I kept seeing the boy's scared face, the way he'd run off into the fog. Holmes, of course, was unfazed. He sat up late, flipping through maps of London and muttering to himself. By morning, the fog had thinned, but the mystery felt thicker than ever. We set out for the Tower of London just after breakfast. The streets were alive with the usual chaos. Vendors shouting, horses clopping, and the stink of coal smoke hanging heavy. Holmes was quiet, his eyes scanning everything. A man reading a newspaper, a woman selling flowers, even the cracks in the pavement. I knew better than to interrupt. His mind was a machine, sorting clues I couldn't even see. The tower loomed ahead, its stone walls dark against the gray sky. The ravens were there, hopping around the grounds, their black feathers glinting. A beefeater in his red uniform stood nearby, telling a group of tourists about the birds. 6 ravens, always kept, he said. If they go, England's done. For old superstition, but we don't take chances. Holmes listened, then pulled me aside. Notice anything, Watson? I looked at the ravens. They seemed normal, cawing and pecking at the grass. Not really. They're just birds. He shook his head. Look closer. The one on the left. Its wing is clipped unevenly. Not the work of a professional. And the ground near that tower wall, see the fresh dirt? Someone's been digging recently. I squinted. He was right, as usual. The dirt was loose, unlike the packed earth around it. You think this is the weeping place? Possibly, Holmes said, but we need more. Let's speak to the keeper. We found the Raven Keeper, an old man named Mr. Grayson, in a small office near the White Tower. He was wiry, with hands like leather and eyes that didn't miss much. Holmes introduced us, keeping his tone polite but firm. Mr. Grayson, have you noticed anything odd about the ravens lately? Or perhaps the grounds? Grayson's eyes narrowed. Odd? You're not one of those reporters, are you? Always poking around for a story. No, sir, Holmes said smoothly. Merely a concerned citizen with an interest in the tower's history. Grayson grunted, but relaxed. The ravens are fine, mostly. One's been acting strange. Grip, we call him. Keeps flying to the same spot by the trader's gate like he's looking for something. And last week I found a scrap of paper near his perch. Thought it was rubbish, but it had some writing on it, threw it out. Holmes's eyes lit up, though his face stayed calm. What kind of writing? Couldn't make sense of it. Looked like gibberish. Lines and dots, no proper words. A cipher, Holmes said, almost to himself. Did you notice anyone unusual near the ravens? A visitor, perhaps, or someone lingering? Grayson scratched his chin. Now you mention it. There was a fellow, a few days back. Tall, wore a long coat, kept his hat low, watched the birds for a long time, didn't talk to anyone, just stood there, gave me the creeps. Holmes thanked him, and we left the office. Outside, he was practically vibrating with energy. A cipher, Watson. A man in a long coat. The Traitor's Gate. The pieces are falling into place. We headed to the Traitor's Gate, a grim archway where prisoners once entered the tower, by boat. The Raven, Grip, was there, perched on a low wall, his beady eyes fixed on the water. Holmes crouched, examining the ground. Here, he said, pointing to a stone slab half hidden by moss. It's been moved. See the scratches? I nodded, though I barely saw what he did. He pressed his fingers along the slab's edge, and, with a low groan, it shifted, revealing a shallow hole. Inside was a small tin box, rusted but intact. Holmes opened it carefully. Inside was another piece of paper, this one covered in strange symbols, lines, dots, and curves like nothing I'd ever seen. A cipher, as I thought, Holmes said, tucking the paper into his pocket. We'll decode it back at Baker Street. For now, we've confirmed one thing. The ravens are indeed weeping, and they've led us to the first thread of this mystery. The rest of the day was a blur. Back at 221B, Holmes spread the paper on his desk, surrounded by books on codes and ciphers. I tried to help, but my head spun with the symbols. By evening, he'd cracked it, though he wouldn't tell me how. A simple substitution cipher, he said, but cleverly disguised. It points to a meeting tomorrow night near St. Paul's Cathedral. We'll be there, Watson, but we must be cautious. Whoever wrote this is playing a dangerous game. As night fell, I sat by the fire, my revolver cleaned and ready. Holmes was still at his desk, sketching a map of St. Paul's and muttering about vaults and secrets. I didn't know what we were walking into, but I knew one thing. London was hiding something dark, and Holmes was the only one who could find it. Chapter 2. Shadows in the fog. The fog was thicker than a wool blanket, swallowing London's streets whole. It clung to everything, muffling the clatter of hooves and the cries of late-night hawkers selling pies or papers. Baker Street was a memory, now left behind as Sherlock Holmes and I stood in a narrow alley near St. Paul's Cathedral. The great dome loomed above, a shadowy giant in the mist, its outline barely visible. My watch said it was near midnight, and the damp air bit at my fingers, making me wish for the warm fire of 221B. My revolver, heavy in my coat pocket, was a small comfort against the creeping unease in my gut. Holmes stood like a statue beside me, his sharp eyes cutting through the fog. He'd been quiet all day, ever since he'd cracked that cipher from the tower. The message was burned into my mind, a meeting at midnight by St. Paul's steps, where the shadow points to truth. He hadn't told me much, only that we were to watch, not act. Observation, Watson, he'd said, his voice low and serious. We're here to see the players in this game, not join it. Not yet. I shifted, my boots scraping the wet cobblestones. Holmes, this feels like a trap. Standing in a dark alley waiting for who knows what. We're sitting ducks. He didn't turn, his gaze fixed on the cathedral steps across the street. A trap is only a danger if you're blind to it, Watson. We're hidden and we're ready. Patience. The minutes dragged, each one heavier than the last. The cathedral's bell tolled, its deep chime swallowed by the fog. A carriage rattled past, its driver a blurry shape hunched against the cold. I was about to whisper something, anything to break the tension, when Holmes's hand clamped my arm, pulling me deeper into the shadows. Quiet, he hissed, his voice barely a breath. A figure emerged from the mist, moving toward the steps. Tall, wrapped in a long black coat, hat pulled low over his eyes. He stopped under a gas lamp, its weak light glinting off a silver-tipped cane he carried. He glanced around, wary, like a fox sniffing for danger, then checked a pocket watch. Another figure joined him, smaller, cloaked in dark cloth, moving fast and light. They spoke in whispers, their words lost in the fog's embrace. Holmes leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. The cane, ebony, silver-tipped, costly. The second figure, small, quick, likely a woman. They're nervous, Watson. Watch their hands. I squinted, trying to see through the haze. The fog was too thick, but Holmes's eyes missed nothing. Who are they? I whispered. No names yet, he said. But they're tied to the vault. The cipher led us here. They know something. The tall man handed the smaller figure a package, small, wrapped in plain cloth. The cloaked one tucked it under their arm and melted back into the fog. The man with the cane stayed a moment longer, lighting a cigarette. The match flared, showing a sharp jaw and a scar slicing across his cheek, pale against his skin. Then, he turned and was gone, swallowed by the mist. Holmes stepped out of the alley, motioning me to follow. We crossed to the steps, keeping low. He knelt where the figures had stood, his fingers brushing the damp stone. No footprints, he muttered. They're careful, but this... He picked up the cigarette butt, sniffing it. Turkish tobacco. Expensive. Our man has money. I glanced around, the fog pressing closer like it was listening. What was in the package? A clue, perhaps a key. Holmes said, standing. Something tied to the vault. We need to follow the woman. Follow? Her? I hissed, my voice low. In this fog? She's gone, Holmes. His eyes gleamed, sharp as a blade. Not quite. Listen. A faint tap-tap of footsteps echoed from the east, quick and light, like a cat on the prowl. Holmes was off, moving like a hound on a scent. I hurried after, my heart thumping, the fog blurring everything. We twisted through alleys, under stone arches, past shuttered shops. The footsteps stayed ahead, always just out of reach. Finally, they stopped. And so did we, near a narrow street lined with dark buildings. A faint light glowed from a doorway, flickering like a candle. Holmes crept forward, peering through a crack in the shutters. I joined him, holding my breath. Inside, the cloaked figure stood by a rickety table, unwrapping the package. It was a woman, young, with dark hair pulled tight and a face sharp with focus. On the table lay a small brass key, its teeth jagged and strange, not like any lock I'd seen. Holmes pulled back, his face grim. That key's no ordinary one. It's for the vault, or something guarding it. Before I could ask more, a scrape sounded behind us. A low, gritty noise, like a boot on stone. Holmes spun, but not fast enough. Something heavy struck my shoulder, hard enough to make me stumble. A dark shape loomed in the fog, then vanished as quick as it came. Holmes grabbed me, steadying me. Are you hurt? Just bruised, I grunted, rubbing my arm. It throbbed, but I'd had worse. Who was that? A watcher, Holmes said, his voice low and tight. We're not the only ones following. Come, we've seen enough. We slipped back into the fog, my mind spinning. The key, the scarred man, the woman, the vault. What did it all mean? Holmes was quiet as we made our way to Baker Street, his mind working faster than I could follow. I knew better than to ask. He'd speak when he was ready. Back at 221B, the fire was low, but Mrs. Hudson had left a pot of tea. I poured a cup, my hands still shaky from the chase. Holmes lit a lamp and spread a map of London across the table, his fingers tracing streets and rivers. The vault is underground, he said, tapping the map. The cipher said, beneath, the city. That key, its design is old, likely for a lock from before our time. Tomorrow we search the archives for records of hidden chambers. I nodded, sinking into my chair. The fog, the chase, the blow to my shoulder. It was a lot, for one night. But Holmes was alive with it, his eyes burning like the lamp. The woman, he said, almost to himself. She's no mere courier. She knew the watcher was there, yet she didn't flinch. And the man with the scar, he's no stranger to danger. We're dealing with a network, Watson, one that guards the vault's secrets. I sipped my tea, trying to piece it together. What kind of secrets are worth all this? Hiding in fog, passing keys, hitting people in alleys? Holmes's smile was thin. Secrets that could shake London, as the letter said. Power, money, betrayal. Pick one, or all three. The vault holds something worth killing for, and we're only scratching the surface. He turned back to the map, muttering about sewers and old tunnels. I watched him, the weight of the night settling on me. The fog outside pressed against the windows, like it was trying to get in. Somewhere out there, the woman with the key was moving. The man with the scar was watching, and the vault waited, hidden beneath the city. I didn't know what we'd find, but I knew one thing. Holmes wouldn't stop until he had the truth. The next morning, the fog had lifted, leaving London gray and damp. Holmes was up before me, already dressed, a stack of books on cryptology and London history piled on his desk. "The Guildhall Library," he said as I stumbled into the sitting room, still rubbing sleep from my eyes. "They have records of old city plans, maps of forgotten places. If the vault exists, there'll be a trace." We took a cab to the Guildhall, the streets bustling with clerks and merchants starting their day. The library was a grand old place, all stone walls and high ceilings, smelling of dust and leather. A librarian, a thin man with glasses perched on his nose, led us to a back room filled with maps and ledgers. Holmes dove in like a man possessed, flipping through yellowed pages, his fingers dancing over faded ink. I tried to help, but the records were a maze. Land deeds, building plans, even old sewer maps. Hours passed, my eyes burning from the strain. Holmes, though, was relentless. "Here," he said at last, pulling out a crumbling map. It showed London from 100 years ago, with strange markings near the river. "These lines, they're not streets or sewers. They're tunnels, Watson, older than the city itself." I leaned over, squinting at the map. The lines twisted under the Thames, connecting to a spot near St. Paul's. "You think the vault's there?" "Possibly," Holmes said. "But we need more. The key's design suggests a lock from the 1700s, maybe earlier. We'll cross-check with locksmith records." We spent the rest of the day digging, finding bits and pieces, a mention of a sealed chamber in a 1760s journal, a sketch of a lock that matched the key's odd teeth. By evening, Holmes had a theory. "The vault is likely tied to a secret society," he said as we walked back to Baker Street. "One that hid something. Documents, treasure, maybe proof of a scandal. The key and the cipher are their safeguards." I frowned. "A secret society? Sounds like something from a penny dreadful." Holmes chuckled, but it was grim. "Truth is often stranger than fiction, Watson. The scarred man, the woman, the watcher, they're part of it. And they know we're close." That night I checked my revolver again, the weight of it familiar now. Holmes sat by the fire, sketching the key from memory, his mind racing. The fog was back, creeping through the streets, hiding who knows what. The vault was out, there, and so were its guardians. And we were in deeper than I liked. Chapter 3. The Enigmatic Client. The rain came down in sheets, hammering the windows of 221B Baker Street and turning the cobblestones outside into a slick, glistening mess. It was just past noon, but the sky was dark as dusk, heavy with clouds. That matched my mood. My shoulder still ached from the blow I'd taken in the alley the night before, and the mystery of the vault was gnawing at me like a bad tooth. Sherlock Holmes, of course, was unbothered, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by maps and papers, his pipe sending curls of smoke into the air. We'd spent the morning poring over the Guildhall's records, and Holmes was certain. The vault lay somewhere beneath the city, tied to old tunnels and a secret society. The brass key, with its strange teeth, sat on the table, catching the lamplight. Every time I looked at it, I felt a chill, like it was watching us back. Holmes was sketching it again, muttering about lock designs from the 1700s, when a sharp knock at the door made me jump. Mrs. Hudson poked her head in, her face pinched with worry. "Mr. Holmes, there's a lady here to see you. Says it's urgent. She won't give her name, but she's a bit odd." Holmes's eyes flicked up, bright with interest. "Odd how?" "She's all wrapped up in a veil, like she doesn't want to be seen. And she's got a voice. Sharp, like she's used to giving orders." "Show her in." Holmes said, setting, his pipe aside. He stood, brushing dust off his trousers, and shot me a look. "Watson, your revolver, keep it close." I nodded, patting my pocket. The memory of last night's watcher was fresh, and I wasn't taking chances. Mrs. Hudson disappeared, and a moment later the door opened again. The woman who stepped in was tall, her figure hidden by a long black cloak and a heavy veil that covered her face. She moved with purpose, like someone who knew exactly what she wanted. The air seemed to tighten around her, as if she carried secrets in her shadow. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" Her voice was low, crisp, with a hint of an accent I couldn't place. Maybe French, maybe something else. "And Dr. Watson, I presume." "You have us at a disadvantage," Holmes said, his tone polite but sharp. "To whom do I owe the pleasure?" She hesitated, then lifted the veil just enough to show a pale chin and lips painted red. Her eyes stayed hidden. "Call me Miss V. My name is not important. What matters is the task I have for you." Holmes gestured to a chair. "Sit, please, and tell me about this task." She didn't sit. Instead, she paced, her cloak swishing. "I know about the letter you received, the one about the vault. I sent it." I felt my jaw drop, but Holmes's face stayed calm, though his eyes narrowed. "Indeed? Then you must know what you've pulled us into. The cipher, the key, the meeting at St. Paul's. Your work, I assume?" She nodded, a quick jerk of her head. "Yes. But I didn't expect you to move so fast. You've already found the key, haven't you?" Holmes didn't answer, just watched her. I could almost hear his mind working, sorting her words, her movements, her lies, if there were any. "Why come to me now?" he asked. "Why not deliver the key yourself or send another cryptic note?" Miss V stopped pacing, her hands clenching. "Because they're watching me. The people who guard the vault. They know I've betrayed them. I need your help, Mr. Holmes. You're the only one who can find it before they do." I couldn't stay quiet. "Who's they? And what's in this vault that's worth all this trouble?" Her head turned toward me, and though I couldn't see her eyes, I felt their weight. "The vault holds proof, documents, letters, names, things that could ruin powerful people. People who've built their fortunes on lies. If they get to it first, they'll destroy it. Or worse, use it to control others." Holmes leaned back, his fingers steepled. "And your role in this? Why betray your associates?" She laughed, a bitter sound. "I was one of them once. I believed their cause was noble, but I saw what they did to keep their secrets. Lies, threats, worse. I want the truth out, Mr. Holmes. But I can't do it alone." He studied her for a long moment, then stood and walked to the table, picking up the brass key. "This is yours, then, or was it stolen?" "It was mine to give," she said. "It's one of 3 keys needed to open the vault. The others are elsewhere. You must find them." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "And the place where the ravens weep? The cipher from the tower?" "A clue to the first key," she said. "You found it, so you know it's real. The next clue is hidden in the city's heart where the bells toll for the lost. But be careful, they're closer than you think." I frowned, my head spinning. Bells toll for the lost? Another riddle? Holmes ignored me. His gaze locked on Miss V. "Why should I trust you? You hide your face, your name, your motives. For all I know, you're leading us into a trap." She stiffened, then reached into her cloak and pulled out a small folded paper. She handed it to Holmes. "This is my proof. It's a page from the vault's records. Read it, and you'll understand." Holmes unfolded the paper, his face unreadable. I leaned over, catching a glimpse of tight handwritten lines. Names, dates, sums of money. It looked like a ledger, but the names were big ones. Lords, bankers, even a member of parliament. Holmes folded it again, tucking it into his pocket. "This changes things," he said. "But it's not enough. I need more than a page and a veiled promise." Miss V's voice hardened. "You'll get more when you find the next key. I can't stay long. They'll know I'm here. Meet me tomorrow night at St. Mary le Bow. Midnight. I'll have another clue." Before Holmes could respond, she turned and swept out, her cloak vanishing through the door. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Then the front door slammed. The rain seemed louder now, like it was trying to drown out what she'd said. I turned to Holmes, my heart racing. Do you believe her? She could be lying, leading us into another ambush. Holmes sat, lighting his pipe again. She's telling part of the truth, Watson. That ledger page, it's genuine. The ink, the paper, the handwriting, all from decades ago. But she's holding back. She's afraid, and not just of her enemies. She's hiding something about herself. I sank into my chair, rubbing my sore shoulder. So, what now? We chase another riddle? Bells toll for the lost, that's St. Mary Le Bow, right? The church? Holmes nodded, puffing smoke. The church's bells are famous. Born within their sound, you're a true Cockney. But the lost suggests something specific. A crypt, perhaps, or a memorial. We'll go there tomorrow, but not for her meeting. We search in daylight before her enemies can set their traps. The rest of the day was a blur of research. Holmes sent a boy to fetch more maps, this time, of churches and their grounds. I helped where I could, but my mind kept drifting to Miss V. Her veiled face, her sharp voice, the ledger that named powerful men. What kind of secrets could bring down lords and bankers? And who was watching us, ready to strike from the shadows? By evening, Holmes had a plan. St. Mary Le Bow has a crypt, he said, pointing to a map. Old, barely used, but there are records of hidden compartments from the Great Fire. If the next clue is there, we'll find it. But we must be careful, Watson. The watcher from last night, they're not working alone. I checked my revolver, the cold metal steadying my nerves. You think it's the man with the scar, or someone else? Holmes's eyes darkened. The scar is a clue, but not the whole story. We're up against a group, Watson. A society that's guarded this vault for years, maybe centuries. Miss V is our way in, but she's also a risk. Trust no one, as the letter said. That night, I barely slept. The rain kept up, drumming on the roof, and every creak of the house made me reach for my gun. Holmes stayed up, sketching the key and the ledger, his mind racing. The vault was real, its secrets closer with every step. But so was the danger, lurking in the rain and shadows. The next morning, we set out for St. Mary Le Bow. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets muddy and slick. The church stood tall, its steeple piercing the gray sky. Inside, it was quiet, the air thick with the smell of old stone and candle wax. Holmes led the way to the crypt, a damp, shadowy place with low ceilings and rows of ancient tombs. We searched for hours, checking walls and floors for hidden panels. My hands were dusty, my back aching when Holmes stopped by a cracked tombstone. Here, he said, his voice low. He pressed a stone, and a small compartment clicked open, revealing a leather pouch. Inside was another key, this one iron, heavier than the first, with a note in the same hurried script as the cipher. The bells guide you to the river's edge. Holmes pocketed the key and note, his face grim. Another step, Watson, but we're being watched. Feel it? I nodded, my skin prickling. The crypt felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. We left quickly, the weight of the new key heavy in Holmes's pocket. Midnight was hours away, but the meeting with Miss V loomed. And so did the shadows, closer than ever. Chapter 4. Whispers of the Vault. The air in London was sharp with the scent of wet stone and coal smoke as Sherlock Holmes and I stepped out of St. Mary Le Bow, the iron key heavy in his pocket. The church's bells had rung out just moments ago, their deep tolls echoing like a warning through the damp streets. It was late afternoon, the sky a dull gray, and the city buzzed with the usual clamor, carts rattling, vendors shouting, and the distant whistle of a steam engine. But beneath it all I felt a weight, like eyes watching from every shadowed corner. Holmes was quiet, his face set in that focused way that meant his mind was racing. The note from the crypt, "The bells guide you to the river's edge," was our next clue, but it was as vague as the last. The second key, iron and worn, sat alongside the brass one from the tower, both tied to the mysterious vault. Miss V's words from earlier rang in my head. Secrets that could ruin powerful people, guarded by a society that didn't hesitate to kill. My shoulder still throbbed from the watcher's blow in the alley, a reminder we weren't alone in this hunt. We headed back to 221B Baker Street, the streets growing darker as evening crept in. Holmes didn't speak, his eyes scanning every face we passed, a flower girl, a man selling matches, a cab driver flicking his reins. I knew he was looking for the watcher, or maybe the scarred man from St. Paul's, but the city was a maze of faces and the fog was creeping back, blurring the edges of everything. Inside our rooms, the fire was a welcome warmth. Mrs. Hudson had left a tray of bread and cold meat, but Holmes ignored it, spreading his maps across the table again. The iron key and the brass one lay side by side, their strange teeth glinting under the lamplight. I sank into my chair, my head spinning with riddles. The river's edge, I said, breaking the silence. That could mean anywhere along the Thames. It's miles of docks, warehouses, and mud. Holmes nodded, his fingers tracing the river's curve on the map. The Thames is London's lifeblood, Watson, but also its hiding place. The note mentions bells, so we stay close to St. Mary-le-Bow. The river's edge near there points to a specific spot, perhaps near the old wharves or a forgotten dock. I rubbed my eyes, tired from the day's search. And this society Miss V mentioned? You think they're watching us now? Undoubtedly, Holmes said, his voice low. The blow you took last night wasn't random. They know we have the keys and they'll want them back. Miss V is our ally, but she's also a liability. Her meeting tonight at midnight, it's as likely a trap as a lead. I checked my revolver, the familiar weight calming my nerves. So what's the plan? We can't just walk into St. Mary-le-Bow at midnight and hope for the best. Holmes's lips twitched into a faint smile. We won't. We go early, Watson. Before the meeting, we search the river's edge near the church. The clue suggests a physical marker, a lock, a door, something the key fits. If we find it, we may not need Miss V at all. The idea of outsmarting her, and whoever was watching, lifted my spirits. We ate a quick meal, though Holmes barely touched his, too, caught up in his thoughts. By 9 o'clock, we were ready, dressed in dark coats to blend with the night. The fog was thicker now, wrapping the streets in a gray veil. My heart pounded as we stepped out, the iron and brass keys in Holmes's pocket, my revolver in mine. The walk to Cheapside near St. Mary-le-Bow was quiet, the fog muffling our steps. The Thames wasn't far, its muddy smell cutting through the air. We kept to the shadows, avoiding the glow of gas lamps. Holmes moved like a cat, silent and sure, while I tried not to trip on the uneven cobbles. The church's steeple was a faint shape above us, its bells silent now. We reached the river's edge near Bow Lane, where old wharves jutted into the water. The Thames was dark, its surface rippling under the fog. Warehouses loomed, their windows black, and the air was heavy with the creak of moored boats. Holmes stopped, his eyes scanning the wharf. Look for anything unusual, he whispered. A lock, a gate, a hidden door. The clue points here. We split up, keeping close enough to see each other in the fog. I checked the wharf's edge, running my hands along rusted railings and weathered wood. The cold bit my fingers, and the fog made every shadow look like a threat. I was about to call out to Holmes when I heard a low scrape like metal on stone. I froze, my hand on my revolver. Holmes, I whispered. He appeared beside me, silent as a ghost. Over here, he said, pointing to a low wall near the water. A rusted iron grate was set into the stone, half hidden by moss and mud. It looked like part of an old sewer or drainage tunnel, but the lock was newer, its metal gleaming faintly. Holmes pulled out the iron key, his eyes bright with excitement. This is it, Watson. He fitted the key into the lock, and it turned with a heavy click. The grate swung open, revealing a dark tunnel, its walls slick with damp. A stale, earthy smell drifted out like something long buried. An old passage, Holmes said, peering inside. Likely from before the Great Fire, leading under the city. I swallowed, my throat tight. You're not going in there now, are you? It's pitch black and we've got that meeting with Miss V. Holmes hesitated, then closed the grate, locking it again. You're right. We'll return with light and tools. But this confirms it. The vault is real and we're close. Before we could say more, a sharp crack echoed from the fog, a twig snapping, or a boot on gravel. Holmes grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a stack of crates. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. I held my breath, my hand on my revolver. A figure passed by, just a shadow in the mist, but I caught the glint of a silver-tipped cane, the scarred man. He stopped, sniffing the air like a hound. For a moment I thought he'd seen us, but then he moved on, his footsteps fading. Holmes waited a full minute before speaking. He knows we're here, he whispered. He's guarding the tunnel or looking for the same clue. We slipped away back toward St. Mary Le Bow, my heart still racing. The church was dark when we arrived, its doors locked, but Holmes picked the lock with a tool from his pocket. Inside, the air was cold, the silence heavy. We moved to the crypt again, checking for anything we'd missed. The compartment where we'd found the iron key was empty now, but Holmes knelt by another tomb, his fingers tracing its edges. Nothing, he muttered, but Miss V chose this place for a reason. She's leading us deeper. The bells struck 11, their tolls shaking the air. 1 hour until the meeting. Holmes stood, his face grim. We'll wait here, Watson, in the shadows. When Miss V arrives, we'll see who she's brought with her. We hid in the crypt, behind a stone pillar, the darkness pressing in. My shoulder ached, my nerves raw. The minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. Finally, the bells rang midnight, and footsteps echoed above. A door creaked and a figure descended into the crypt, Miss V, her veil still hiding her face. She carried a small lantern, its light casting eerie shadows. "Mr. Holmes?" she called, her voice sharp but nervous. Holmes stepped out and I followed, my revolver ready. "We're here," he said. "What do you have for us?" She froze, then relaxed slightly. "You found the second key. Good. The third is near the river, where the old bridge stood. But you must hurry. They're closing." And before Holmes could ask more, a noise, quick footsteps came from above. Miss V gasped, dropping her lantern. It shattered, plunging us into darkness. I heard a scuffle, then a cry, and my heart leapt into my throat. "Holmes!" I shouted, drawing my revolver. A match flared, and Holmes stood there, unharmed, holding Miss V's arm. She was shaking, her veil askew, showing a glimpse of dark eyes wide with fear. "They're here," she whispered. "Run." We bolted up the stairs, out into the fog. Footsteps chased us, fast and heavy. We ducked into an alley, my lungs burning as we ran. The fog hit us, but it hit our pursuers too. Finally, we stopped, gasping, in a quiet street far from the church. Miss V was gone. She'd slipped away in the chaos. Holmes leaned against a wall, catching his breath. "She's playing a dangerous game, Watson, but she's given us the next clue, the old bridge. London Bridge, perhaps, or its ruins." I nodded, my hands still shaking. "And the vault?" "We're closer, but so are they." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. The game is on, Watson. Tomorrow, we find the third key." Back at 221B, we sat. By the fire, the keys and maps spread out. The rain had started again, drumming on the windows. The vault was out there, its secrets waiting. But so were the watchers, and they were getting bolder. Chapter 5. The trail begins. The morning broke cold and gray, with a drizzle that soaked through my coat as Sherlock Holmes and I stepped out of 221B Baker Street. The events of last night, the chase from St. Mary Le Bow, Miss V's panicked warning, the shadow of the scarred man, clung to me like the damp air. My shoulder still ached from the blow 2 nights ago and my nerves were frayed, but Holmes was sharp as ever, his eyes bright with the hunt. The iron and brass keys jangled in his pocket, and the latest clue, the old bridge, burned in my mind. We were closing in on the vault, but the danger was closer still. Holmes had barely slept, poring over maps and books until dawn. He was convinced the clue pointed to the remnants of the old London Bridge, replaced years ago but still marked by ruins near the Thames's banks. "The river hides many secrets, Watson," he'd said over breakfast, his voice low. "The old bridge's foundations may hold the third key or a path to it." We took a cab to the Southwark side of the Thames where the river churned, muddy and swollen from the rain. The air smelled of fish and tar, and the docks were alive with workers unloading crates and sailors shouting. Holmes led the way, his long coat flapping as he moved toward a stretch of crumbling stone walls near the water's edge. The new London Bridge loomed nearby, but we were after the old one, its broken piers and hidden nooks. "Keep your eyes open," Holmes said, his voice cutting through the drizzle. The clue said where the old bridge stood. "Look for anything out of place, a marker, a lock, or a sign of tampering." I nodded, pulling my hat low against the rain. My revolver was a reassuring weight in my pocket, though I hoped I wouldn't need it. The docks were crowded, but the fog from last night lingered in patches, making every shadow suspect. I scanned the faces around us, dock hands, a fishmonger, a boy selling papers, but none seemed to watch us too closely. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being followed. Holmes stopped by a weathered stone pillar, half sunk in the mud. It was part of the old bridge's foundation, covered in moss and scarred by time. He knelt, his fingers brushing the stone, then froze. "Here," he said, pointing to a faint carving, a circle with a cross inside, barely visible. "This isn't natural. It's a mark, Watson, likely from the same society guarding the vault." I squinted, barely making it out in the dim light. "A symbol? What does it mean?" "A guide," Holmes said, standing. "Or a warning. Either way, it's deliberate." He pulled out the iron key, comparing its shape to the carving. "No lock here, but this is a signpost. The third key is close." We moved along the riverbank, checking other pillars and walls. The drizzle turned to a steady rain, soaking my boots and making the stones slippery. I was about to suggest we head back when Holmes grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a stack of barrels. "Quiet," he whispered, his eyes fixed on a figure across the dock. It was a man, tall and broad, wearing a heavy coat and a slouched hat. He stood by the water, pretending to inspect a crate, but his glances darted our way. "Another watcher," I whispered, my hand on my revolver. Holmes nodded. "Likely. He's too still, too aware. We need to lose him before we search further." We slipped through the maze of crates and ropes, keeping low. The man didn't follow, but I felt his eyes on us like a weight pressing down. Holmes led us to a narrow alley off the docks where the noise of the river faded. "We can't search with him watching," he said. "We'll circle back tonight, under cover of darkness." I frowned, wiping rain from my face. "What about Miss V? She said they're closing in. If we wait, they might beat us to the key." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Miss V is a complication. She's given us clues, but she's also drawing attention. Her fear last night was real, but so is her secrecy. We trust only what we find ourselves." We returned to Baker Street to regroup, the rain following us like a curse. Inside, Holmes spread out his maps again, marking the spot by the old bridge. "The symbol suggests a hidden entrance," he said, tapping the map. "The old bridge's foundations connect to tunnels, some recorded, some not. The third key will unlock the next step, perhaps the vault itself." I sat by the fire, drying my coat. "And the society? You think the man at the dock is one of them?" "Almost certainly," Holmes said, lighting his pipe. "The scarred man, the watcher in the alley, now this one, they're a network, guarding the vault's secrets. The ledger Miss V showed us, names of lords, bankers, politicians, suggests a conspiracy that's lasted decades." I shivered, and not just from the damp. What could be worth all this? Murder, chases, hidden keys. Holmes puffed smoke, his eyes distant. "Power, Watson. The vault holds proof. Documents maybe, or evidence of crimes that could topple the powerful. Whoever controls it controls London's underbelly." The day dragged on, the rain relentless. Holmes sent a message to one of his street boys, part of his Baker Street irregulars, to watch the docks for suspicious activity. By evening, the boy returned, soaked but eager. reporting that the man in the heavy coat had lingered near the pillar, then left in a hurry. He met another bloke, the boy said, tall, with a scar on his face. They talked low, then split. Holmes's eyes lit up. The scarred man again. They're guarding the site, Watson. Tonight we move. We waited until dark, the rain easing to a mist. Armed with lanterns, tools, and my revolver, we returned to the Southwark docks. The river was quiet now, the workers gone, leaving only the creak of boats and the lap of water. The pillar stood alone, its carved symbol hidden in the shadows. Holmes worked quickly, checking the stone for a lock or panel. I kept watch, my heart pounding, every sound making me grip my gun tighter. There, Holmes whispered, his fingers finding a seam in the stone. He pressed the iron key into a hidden slot, and with a low grind, a section of the pillar slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel. The air inside was cold, smelling of earth and decay. Another passage, Holmes said, his voice alive with excitement. This leads deeper, perhaps to the vault itself. Before we could enter, a shout broke the silence, a harsh voice from the dock. They're here. Figures moved in the mist, 3 of them closing in fast. One held a lantern, its light catching the scarred man's face, his silver-tipped cane gleaming. Another was the broad man from earlier, a club in his hand. The third was cloaked, face hidden. "Run, Watson," Holmes hissed, slamming the panel shut. We bolted along the riverbank, the men's footsteps pounding behind us. The mist hid us, but it hid them too, their shouts echoing. We ducked into an alley, then another, weaving through Southwark's maze until the sounds faded. My lungs burned, my legs shaking, but we'd lost them for now. Back at 221B, we collapsed into chairs, soaked and breathless. Holmes held up the iron key, still in his grip. "We found the path, Watson, but they're guarding it closely. The third key is in that tunnel or beyond it." I nodded, my heart still racing. "And the vault? We're close, aren't we?" Holmes's smile was grim. "Closer than they'd like. Tomorrow, we return with a plan. The trail has begun, Watson, and it leads straight into danger." The fire crackled, but it did little to warm the chill in my bones. The vault's secrets were out there, hidden in the dark, and so were the men who'd kill to keep them buried. Holmes was already sketching, the tunnel's entrance, his mind racing ahead. I checked my revolver, knowing we'd need it soon. Chapter 6. A Study in Secrets. The rain had stopped, but the streets of London were still slick and shining under the gas lamps as Sherlock Holmes and I prepared to return to the Southwark docks. It was just past dusk, the sky a bruised purple, and the air carried the sharp bite of the Thames. Mud, salt, and something sour I couldn't name. My shoulder ached worse now, the bruise from the alley 2 nights ago joined by new soreness from last night's chase. My revolver was in my pocket, cleaned and loaded, its weight a grim reminder of the danger we were walking into. Holmes, as always, seemed untouched by the strain, his eyes bright with that restless energy that came when a puzzle gripped him. We'd barely slept after escaping the scarred man and his men. Holmes had spent the night pacing, muttering about tunnels, keys, and the secret society guarding the vault. The brass and iron keys sat on his desk, their strange teeth glinting like they held secrets of their own. The latest clue, the old bridge, had led us to the hidden tunnel under the pillar, but the third key was still out there, and so were our pursuers. Miss V's warning echoed in my head. They're closing in. Whoever they weren't playing games. Holmes had a plan, as always. "We go back to the tunnel," he'd said over a hurried breakfast of tea and toast. "But we go prepared. Lanterns, tools, and caution, Watson. The third key is near, and we won't let them stop us this time." Now, as we stepped out of 221B, the city felt alive with menace. The fog was thinner tonight, but it still clung to the alleys, making every shadow a threat. We took a cab to Southwark, the driver's lantern swaying as we crossed the new London Bridge. The old bridge's ruins waited below, dark and silent, hiding the tunnel we'd found. I gripped my revolver, my heart thudding. "Holmes," I said, keeping my voice low, "what if they're waiting for us? The scarred man, the others. They know we found the tunnel. Holmes's eyes flicked to me, sharp as a blade. Then, we outwit them, Watson. They're bold but not clever. We move fast, stay hidden, and take what's ours. We reached the docks, the air thick with the smell of tar and rotting wood. The river lapped at the banks, its surface black under the cloudy sky. The pillar with the carved circle and cross stood where we'd left it, untouched but ominous. Holmes knelt, checking the ground for signs of tampering. "No fresh tracks," he murmured. "But they've been here. See the scuff marks? Someone paced this spot, watching." I scanned the docks, my hand on my gun. The workers were gone. The boats moored, but the silence felt heavy, like it was waiting to break. Holmes pulled out the iron key, fitting it into the hidden slot in the pillar. The stone panel grated open, revealing the tunnel's dark mouth. He lit a lantern, its light showing slick stone walls and a floor that sloped downward. "Stay close," he said, stepping inside. I followed, the air turning cold and damp, the smell of earth and decay stronger now. The tunnel was narrow, barely, wide enough for us to walk side by side, and the lantern's glow barely reached the shadows ahead. Our footsteps echoed too loud for my liking. "Where does this go?" I whispered, my voice sounding small. "Under the river, likely," Holmes said, his voice steady. "These tunnels predate the city's current layout, smugglers' paths, or secret routes for those who needed to move unseen. The vault is close, Watson, I can feel it." We moved deeper, the air growing heavier, the walls pressing in. My heart pounded, every drip of water or creak of stone making me flinch. Holmes stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. "Listen," he whispered. A faint sound came from ahead, a low scrape, like metal on stone. Holmes dimmed the lantern, plunging us into near darkness. I gripped my revolver, my pulse racing. The sound came again, closer now, and then a voice, low, urgent, but too muffled to make out words. Holmes crept forward, silent as a shadow, and I followed, my boots scraping softly. The tunnel opened into a small chamber, its walls carved with the same circle and cross symbol we'd seen on the pillar. In the center stood a stone pedestal, and on it a rusted iron box. Holmes's eyes gleamed as he approached, but before he could touch it, a figure stepped from the shadows. A woman, cloaked, her face hidden. "Miss V, Mr. Holmes," she said, her voice sharp but shaky. "You're faster than I expected, but you're not alone." Holmes didn't flinch. "Nor are you, Miss V. Who's with you? The scarred man, or another of your society?" She stiffened, her hands clenching. "I came alone, but they're near. You have the second key, use it, the box holds the third." Holmes glanced at me, a warning in his eyes, then stepped to the pedestal. He fitted the iron key into the box's lock, and it opened with a heavy click. Inside was another key, bronze, its teeth even stranger than the others, with a note in the same hurried script. "The heart of the city beats where the shadows meet." Before I could speak, a loud crack echoed through the tunnel, a gunshot. I dove behind the pedestal, pulling Holmes with me. Miss V gasped, dropping to the floor. Footsteps pounded, and two figures burst into the chamber. The scarred man, his silver-tipped cane raised like a weapon, and the broad man from the docks, holding a pistol. "Give us the keys," the scarred man barked, his voice rough, his scar twisting as he sneered. Holmes stood, calm as ice. "You're too late," he said, holding up the bronze key. "This belongs to us now." The broad man raised his pistol, but I was faster, firing a shot that grazed his arm. He yelped, dropping the gun, and Holmes lunged, tackling the scarred man. They grappled, the cane clattering to the stone. I grabbed Miss V, pulling her behind the pedestal as more footsteps echoed. More men coming. "Run!" Holmes shouted, shoving the scarred man back. He grabbed the bronze key and the note, and we bolted down a side tunnel, Miss V stumbling beside us. The air was thick, the lantern swinging wildly as we ran. Shouts and footsteps chased us, but the tunnel twisted, splitting into three paths. Holmes chose one, dragging us along, until the sounds faded. We stopped, gasping, in a dark, dripping chamber. Miss V was shaking, her veil gone, revealing a pale face and dark eyes wide with fear. "They'll kill me," she whispered. They know I've helped you. Holmes's face was hard. Then tell us everything. Who are they? What's in the vault? She hesitated, then spoke, her voice low. The Order of the Cross. A society centuries old guarding secrets, letters, contracts, proof of crimes by the powerful. The vault holds it all. They'll do anything to keep it hidden. I stared, my mind reeling. And you were one of them? She nodded. Until I saw what they did. Murder, blackmail. I want the truth out, but they'll kill to stop it. Holmes pocketed the bronze key. The heart of the city, where the shadows meet. Where is it? Miss V swallowed. The old exchange near the Bank of England, but it's guarded. You'll need all 3 keys. A shout echoed, closer now. Holmes grabbed her arm. Come with us or stay and face them. She shook her head. I'll slow you down, go. I'll find you later. She vanished into a side tunnel, her footsteps fading. Holmes didn't wait, pulling me along. We emerged from a grate near the river, the night air cold and sharp. The docks were quiet, but I knew the Order was out there, hunting us. Back at 221B, Holmes spread the map again, marking the Bank of England. The old exchange, he said. A forgotten building, perfect for hiding a vault. We're close, Watson, but so are they. I checked my revolver, my hands steady despite the fear. The vault's secrets were within reach, but the cross was closing in, and the bronze key felt like a target on our backs. Chapter 7. The Underground Network. The night was black as ink, the stars hidden behind clouds as Sherlock Holmes and I slipped out of 221B Baker Street. The air was damp, carrying the Thames's muddy scent, and a faint fog crept along the cobblestones, making every lamp glow like a ghost. My heart hadn't stopped racing since our escape from the tunnel beneath the old bridge, where we'd found the bronze key and barely dodged the Order of the Cross. The 3 keys, brass, iron, and bronze, were now in Holmes's pocket, each one a step closer to the vault and its secrets. Miss V's words haunted me. The Order, a centuries-old group, guarding proof of crimes that could topple London's elite. My revolver, heavy in my coat, felt like my only anchor in the growing storm. Holmes was silent as we moved through the streets, his face sharp in the dim light. The latest clue, the heart of the city where the shadows meet, pointed to the old Royal Exchange near the Bank of England. He'd spent the day cross-checking maps and old records confirming the exchange had hidden cellars, possibly linked to the tunnels we'd found. The vault is there, Watson, he'd said, his voice low but certain. But the Order will be too. We must move before they do. We took no cab this time, sticking to alleys to avoid prying eyes. The city was quiet, save for the occasional clatter of a late carriage or a drunk's shout. My shoulder throbbed from the old bruise, but I kept pace with Holmes, his long strides eating up the ground. What's the plan? I whispered as we neared the Bank of England, its grand columns looming in the fog. We find the entrance, Holmes said, his eyes scanning the shadows. The old exchange has basements, forgotten since the new building went up. The keys will unlock something, a door, a gate, maybe the vault itself. But we stay sharp. The Order knows we're close. The old Royal Exchange was a dark hulk, its once busy halls now empty, replaced by the newer exchange nearby. We circled to a side alley, where a rusted iron gate led to a service entrance. Holmes knelt, examining the lock. This is it, he said, pulling out the bronze key. It fit perfectly, turning with a heavy click. The gate creaked open, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. I lit our lantern, its weak glow showing damp walls and a slick floor. The air was cold, thick with the smell of mold and earth. Another tunnel, I muttered, my voice echoing. How many of these are under London? Holmes's lips twitched. More than anyone knows, Watson. Smugglers, rebels, societies like the Order, they've carved their secrets into the city's bones. We descended, the lantern casting long shadows. The tunnel was wider than the last, with signs of recent use. Scuff marks on the floor, a cigarette butt in a corner. Holmes paused, sniffing the butt. Turkish again, he said. Our scarred friend was here, or someone like him. My grip tightened on my revolver. They're ahead of us, aren't they? Not far, Holmes said, moving forward. But they don't have all the keys we do. The tunnel split, one path sloping down, another veering left. Holmes chose the left, following faint scratches on the wall, more circle and cross symbols like the one on the pillar. The orders mark, he said. They've mapped this network, but so have we. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, its walls lined with stone arches like an underground cathedral. In the center was a heavy iron door, carved with the same circle and cross. 3 keyholes gleamed in the lantern's light, each a different shape. Holmes's eyes lit up. The vault, Watson, or its gateway. He pulled out the keys, fitting the brass, iron, and bronze into their slots. They turned smoothly, and the door groaned open, revealing a smaller chamber. Inside was no treasure, but a wooden box, old and weathered, with a single lock. Holmes opened it with a tool from his pocket, revealing a bundle of papers, letters, maps, and a ledger like the one Miss V had shown us, filled with names, dates, and sums. I leaned closer, my heart pounding. Is this it? The vault's secrets? Holmes scanned the papers, his face grim. Part of it. These are records of bribes, blackmail, murders, crimes tied to names in high places. But this isn't the vault itself, it's a cache, a piece of the puzzle. The real vault is deeper. Before I could ask more, a low rumble echoed through the tunnel like stone shifting. Holmes grabbed the papers, stuffing them into his coat. Move, Watson, he hissed. We ran back through the chamber, the rumble growing louder. Dust fell from the ceiling, and I realized with a sick jolt that the tunnel was collapsing, deliberately. The order had set a trap. We reached the split, but the downward path was blocked by fallen stone. The left path was our only chance. We sprinted, the lantern swinging as the ground shook and rocks crashed behind us. A figure appeared ahead, the scarred man, his cane raised like a club. The keys, he snarled. Give them to me. Holmes didn't stop, dodging as the cane swung. I fired my revolver, the shot echoing, but it missed, sparking off the wall. The scarred man lunged, but Holmes was faster, tripping him with a quick move. We ran past, his curses fading as the tunnel shook harder. We burst out of the gate into the alley, gasping, the papers still in Holmes's coat. The rumble stopped, leaving an eerie silence. The fog had thickened, hiding us from any watchers, but I knew they were close. That was too near, I panted, my hands shaking. Holmes nodded, his face pale but calm. They meant to bury us, Watson. The order is desperate. These papers, he patted his coat, they're enough to scare them, but not enough to end this. We slipped through the alleys, back to Baker Street. Inside, Holmes spread the papers on the table, his eyes scanning the names, lords, bankers, even a judge. This is why they're fighting, he said. Proof of a network, a conspiracy that's held power for years. The vault holds more, but we've struck a blow. I sank into my chair, my heart still racing. What now? They'll come for us, won't they? Holmes's smile was sharp. Let them try. We have the keys, the papers, and the next move. Tomorrow we find the true vault, where the shadows meet in the heart of the city. The fog pressed against the windows, the night alive with unseen eyes. The order was out there, and the vault's secrets were closer than ever. But so was the danger, sharper and colder than the London night. Chapter 8. The Locked Room. Riddle. The morning light barely pierced the thick clouds over London, casting Baker Street in a dull, gray haze. Inside 221B, the air was heavy with the smell of pipe smoke and old books, the fire doing little to chase away the chill in my bones. My hands still shook from last night's escape. The collapsing tunnel, the scarred man's snarl, the papers we'd snatched from the underground cache. Sherlock Holmes sat at the table, the stolen ledger and letters spread before him, his eyes scanning the pages like a hawk searching for prey. The 3 keys, brass, iron, and bronze, lay beside them, glinting faintly. each one a step closer to the vault and its dangerous secrets. I rubbed my aching shoulder, the bruise from days ago now joined by new soreness from our frantic run. "Holmes," I said, my voice hoarse. "Those papers. Names of lords, bankers, a judge. This is bigger than we thought. The Order of the Cross won't stop until they get them back." Holmes didn't look up, his fingers tracing a line in the ledger. "Precisely, Watson. These documents are a glimpse of the vault's contents. Proof of bribes, betrayals, even murders, all tied to London's elite. But they're incomplete. The true vault holds the rest, and we're closer than ever to finding it. The latest clue, the heart of the city where the shadows meet, still pointed to the old Royal Exchange, but the tunnel collapse meant we'd need another way in." Holmes had spent the night cross-referencing the papers with his maps, muttering about hidden rooms and forgotten cellars. "The Order's desperate," he'd said. "They tried to bury us, but they've only shown their hand." A sharp knock at the door broke my thoughts. Mrs. Hudson entered, her face pale. "Mr. Holmes, there's a man here. Says he must see you now. He looks dangerous." Holmes's eyes flicked up, sharp and curious. "Describe him." "Tall, thin with a limp," she said, wringing her hands. "Wears a dark coat and his eyes cold as ice. He wouldn't give a name." "Show him in," Holmes said, his voice calm but edged with steel. He glanced at me. "Watson, your revolver. Keep it ready." I nodded, my hand already on the gun in my pocket. Mrs. Hudson left, and a moment later a man stepped into the room. He was as she'd described, tall, gaunt, with a slight limp and a face like a carved mask, pale and hard. His coat was expensive, but worn, and his eyes darted between us, missing nothing. He carried no cane, but his right hand stayed close to his side, as if hiding something. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes," he said, his voice low and smooth, with a hint of menace. "And Dr. Watson, I've heard much about you." Holmes leaned back, his fingers steepled. "And yet I know nothing of you." "State your business," the man smiled, thin and cold. "I represent certain interests. You have something that doesn't belong to you. Papers, keys, knowledge. Return them, and you may walk away." I felt my grip tighten on the revolver. Holmes's face didn't change. "You're with the Order of the Cross," he said, not a question. "And you're here to threaten us. A bold move, but foolish. You've walked into my home." The man's smile faded. "You don't understand what you're meddling with. The vault secrets are not for you. Give me the keys, or you'll regret it." Holmes stood, his movements slow and deliberate. "You're not the scarred man, nor the broad one from the docks. You're higher up, aren't you? A leader, perhaps. But you're nervous. Your limp worsens under stress, and your hand twitches toward a weapon you haven't drawn. You're afraid." The man's eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. "Last chance, Holmes, the keys or blood." Before I could blink, Holmes lunged, grabbing the man's wrist. A knife flashed, but Holmes twisted, pinning him to the floor. I jumped up, revolver aimed, but the man was fast, rolling free and scrambling for the door. Holmes let him go, his face calm. "Let him run, Watson. He's told us enough." I lowered my gun, my heart pounding. "Enough? He nearly knifed you." Holmes picked up the knife the man had dropped, a thin blade, engraved with the circle and cross symbol. "He's confirmed the Order's fear. They're desperate to stop us, which means we're close, and this," he held up the knife, "is another clue. The engraving matches the vault's door." We locked the door, and Holmes returned to the papers, his mind already racing. "The old Royal Exchange," he said. "The tunnel collapse was a setback, but there's another way in, a room hidden in the cellars. The papers mention a locked chamber used by merchants long ago. That's our target." By noon we were ready. We packed lanterns, tools, and the keys, and I made sure my revolver was loaded. The streets were busy, clerks and traders bustling around the Bank of England, but the old exchange was quiet, its stone walls dark with age. We found a side entrance, a heavy door half hidden by crates. Holmes tried the bronze key, but it didn't fit. He frowned, then pulled out a lockpick, working the door open in seconds. Inside, the air was stale, the floor dusty. A narrow staircase led down to a cellar, its walls lined with old barrels and broken shelves. Holmes moved quickly, checking for hidden panels. The papers mentioned a room sealed since the 1700s, he said. Look for a lock or a seam. We searched, the lantern's light casting eerie shadows. My nerves were raw, every creak making me jump. Finally, Holmes stopped by a cracked wall, his fingers tracing a faint outline. Here, he said, pressing the bronze key into a hidden slot. A panel slid open, revealing a small room, its walls bare except for a single iron door with 3 keyholes. The vault? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Not yet, Holmes said, fitting the brass, iron, and bronze keys into the locks. They turned, and the door opened with a groan, revealing a stone staircase descending deeper. This is the path to it. We stepped inside, the air colder, heavier. The staircase spiraled down, ending in a locked gate. Beyond it, a faint glow flickered like a distant lamp. Voices echoed. Low, urgent. Holmes dimmed our lantern, his face grim. The order, he whispered. They're already here. Crept closer, hiding behind a stone column. 3 figures stood in a chamber below, one holding a lantern. The scarred man was there, his cane tapping the floor, and beside him was the broad man from the docks. The third was cloaked, face hidden, maybe Miss V or someone new. They were arguing, their voices sharp. The keys are gone, the scarred man growled. He has them. We need to seal the vault now. Too late, the cloaked figure said, voice low. Holmes is too close. We kill him, or we lose everything. I gripped my revolver, my heart hammering. Holmes leaned close. We need to move, Watson. The vault's beyond that gate. If we can get past them. A stone skittered behind us, and I spun, revolver raised. The gaunt man from 221B stood there, his knife gleaming. You should have listened, he hissed, lunging. I fired, the shot deafening in the tight space. The man staggered, clutching his shoulder, and fell. The others below turned, shouting, and Holmes grabbed me, pulling me toward the gate. He worked the keys, his hand steadied despite the chaos. The gate swung open, and we ran, the scarred man's shouts echoing behind us. The tunnel twisted, leading to a massive iron door carved with the circle and cross. It had no keyholes, only a strange circular dial. Holmes cursed under his breath. A combination lock, the papers, there must be a code. Footsteps closed in, and I fired another shot, keeping the pursuers back. Holmes pulled out the ledger, scanning it frantically. Numbers, here! He spun the dial, muttering a sequence from the papers. The door clicked, then groaned open, revealing a vast chamber, its walls lined with shelves of documents, sealed boxes, and glinting gold. The vault, I breathed, my voice shaking. Holmes nodded, but there was no time to celebrate. The scarred man and his group burst in, weapons raised. You've gone too far, he snarled, raising his cane. Holmes faced him, calm as ever. You've lost. The vault's open and the truth will come out. The scarred man lunged, but I tackled him, my revolver clattering. We fought. Fists and kicks in the dark while Holmes grabbed a box from the shelves. The broad man charged, but Holmes dodged, tripping him. The cloaked figure hesitated, then fled, disappearing into the tunnel. We subdued the scarred man, tying him with rope from Holmes's pack. The broad man groaned, out cold. Holmes opened the box, revealing more papers, letters, contracts, names that made my blood run cold. This is it, Watson, he said, the heart of the Order's power. We took what we could carry, sealing the vault behind us. The tunnels were silent now, the Order's men gone or defeated. Back at 221B, we spread the papers out, the weight of their secrets heavy. The vault was open, but the fight wasn't over. The Order would come for us, and the truth would shake London. Chapter 9. Clues in the Archives. The dawn was gray and heavy, the air thick with the promise of more rain as Sherlock Holmes and I sat in the dim light of 221B Baker Street. The fire sputtered, barely warming the room, and the weight of last night's discovery pressed on me like a stone. We'd opened the vault beneath the old Royal Exchange, found shelves of documents, and escaped with a box of papers, letters, contracts, and lists of names that could ruin London's most powerful. The scarred man was tied up when we left him, but the cloaked figure had vanished and the Order of the Cross was still out there hunting us. My revolver lay on the table, its barrel cool but ready, and my shoulder ached from the fight. Holmes, as always, was calm, his sharp eyes scanning the stolen papers spread across the table. The 3 keys, brass, iron, and bronze, sat beside the box, their job done for now. The vault had been real, its secrets as dangerous as Miss V had warned, but the papers we'd taken were only a piece of the puzzle. "There's more, Watson," Holmes had said as we stumbled back to Baker Street, panting and bruised. "The vault is a network, not a single chamber. These documents point to other hiding places, other truths." Now, as the city woke outside, Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog we'd fled through. "The papers confirm the order's reach," he said, tapping a letter with a lord's name scrawled in faded ink. "Bribes, blackmail, even a murder tied to a bank. But they mention another archive, a record of the order's history hidden in plain sight." I leaned over, my head throbbing from lack of sleep. "Plain sight? Where?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The British Museum. Its library holds manuscripts, some so old they're forgotten. The Order used it as a cover, hiding their records among dusty tomes. We need to find those manuscripts, Watson. They'll tell us who the Order is and what they're protecting." I rubbed my eyes, the weight of it all sinking in. "The museum? It's huge, Holmes. Thousands of books, manuscripts, papers. How do we even start?" He stood, already pulling on his coat. "With precision. The papers mention a keeper of secrets, a librarian or scholar in the Order's pay. We find them. We find the records. We left 221B, the streets wet and bustling despite the early hour. The British Museum loomed ahead, its grand columns, like sentinels in the gray light. Inside, the air was cool and musty, smelling of old paper and polish. The reading room was a vast dome, lined with bookshelves that stretched to the ceiling, filled with scholars hunched over desks. Holmes moved like he belonged, his eyes scanning faces and titles while I followed, feeling out of place with my revolver hidden under my coat. We approached a clerk, a thin man with ink-stained fingers and a nervous twitch. "We're researching historical societies," Holmes said, his voice smooth. "Manuscripts from the 1700s, perhaps tied to merchant groups or private clubs." The clerk blinked, adjusting his glasses. "That's specific. We have collections in the manuscript room, but you'll need permission. Mr. Harrow oversees those." Holmes's lips twitched. "Mr. Harrow, where might we find him?" The clerk pointed to a side door. "He's in the archives, but he's particular about visitors. Good luck." We found the manuscript room, a quieter space with rows of locked cabinets and long tables. Mr. Harrow was a short, balding man with sharp eyes and a clipboard, sorting papers with quick, precise movements. Holmes introduced us, keeping his tone, polite but firm. "Mr. Harrow, we're seeking records of old London societies, possibly merchant guilds. Manuscripts from the 1700s with unusual markings." Harrow's eyes flicked up, and I saw a flash of something, fear, maybe, or suspicion. "Unusual markings?" he said, his voice tight. "You'll need to be more specific. We have thousands of documents." Holmes leaned closer, his voice low. "A circle with a cross inside. Sound familiar?" Harrow froze, his clipboard trembling. I don't know what you mean. Those records are restricted. You'd need special access." Holmes's smile was thin. "Then grant it. We're not here to waste your time, or ours." Harrow hesitated, then led us to a locked cabinet. In the corner. "Wait here," he muttered, disappearing through a back door. I glanced at Holmes, my hand on my revolver. "He's nervous? You think he's one of them?" "Possibly," Holmes said, his eyes scanning the room. "Or he's just scared. Either way, he knows something." Minutes passed, too long for my liking. I was about to suggest we follow when Harrow returned, his face pale, carrying a leather-bound manuscript. "This is what you want," he said, setting it on the table. "But I warn you, some things are better left alone." Holmes opened the manuscript, its pages yellowed and brittle. The circle and cross symbol was there, etched in faded ink, alongside lists of names, dates, and cryptic notes. "The Order's history," Holmes murmured. "Meetings, members, even locations of other caches. This is gold, Watson." I leaned closer, catching names that matched the vault's papers. AI's ear, Lord a banker, a judge. But before I could read more, a shadow moved behind us. I spun, revolver half drawn, as a figure ducked behind a cabinet. "Holmes?" I hissed. He was already moving, slipping toward the cabinet like a cat. A man burst out, a tall figure in a dark coat, not the scarred man, but someone new, with a knife gleaming in his hand. "You've gone too far," he snarled, lunging at Holmes. I tackled him, my shoulders screaming as we hit the floor. The knife skidded away, and Holmes pinned the man's arms. "Who sent you?" he demanded. "The Order? The Keeper of Secrets?" The man spat, struggling. "You'll die for this, Holmes. The vault stays shut." Harrow screamed, dropping his clipboard and running for the door. I tied the attacker's hands with my belt, my heart pounding. "What now?" I asked, breathless. Holmes grabbed the manuscript, tucking it into his coat. "We take this and go. The museum's not safe." We slipped out a side exit, the manuscript heavy under Holmes's arm. The streets were crowded, but I felt eyes everywhere. The Order's watchers, closing in. Back at 221B, Holmes spread the manuscript on the table, its pages revealing more of the Order's web. Secret meetings in old churches, hidden rooms under banks, names of men long dead, but whose crimes lived on. "This changes everything," Holmes said, his voice low. "The Order isn't just a group, it's a machine built to protect the powerful. The vault we found was one of many. The true heart of their secrets is elsewhere." I sank into my chair, my head spinning. Where then? Another tunnel? Another key? Holmes's eyes narrowed. "The manuscript mentions a final chamber, guarded by a keeper. Harrow knows more than he's saying. Tomorrow we find him and the truth." The night was quiet, but the air felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. The Order was out there, their knives sharp and their secrets sharper. We had the manuscript, the keys, and a trail leading deeper into danger. I checked my revolver, knowing sleep wouldn't come easy. Chapter 10. The Masked Informant. The fog was back, thick and cold, wrapping London in a shroud as Sherlock Holmes and I stepped out of 221B Baker Street. It was well past midnight, the city quiet except for the distant clop of a horse's hooves and the low moan of the Thames. My heart hadn't settled since our escape from the British Museum, where we'd snatched the Order of the Cross's manuscript and fought off an attacker. The document, now tucked inside Holmes's coat, was a map of secrets. Names, dates, and hints of a final chamber guarded by a mysterious keeper. Mr. Harrow, the nervous librarian, was our next lead, but he'd vanished into the museum's maze, leaving us with more questions than answers. My shoulder throbbed, the old bruise joined by new aches from yesterday's scuffle. My revolver, heavy in my pocket, was a grim comfort as we moved through the fog, heading for a meeting Holmes had arranged. "Harrow's scared," he'd said earlier, poring over the manuscript. "He knows too much, and the Order knows it. We need to find him before they do." The meeting wasn't with Harrow, though. Holmes had sent one of his Baker Street irregulars, a scrappy boy named Wiggins, to spread word in London's underbelly, looking for someone who knew the Order's secrets. Wiggins had come back with a tip, a masked informant, willing to talk, but only in secret, at a derelict tavern in Whitechapel. "A risky move, Watson," Holmes had warned, "but we need answers." Now, as we slipped through Whitechapel's narrow alleys, the fog made every shadow a threat. The tavern, called the Black Anchor, was a crumbling heap of wood and brick, its windows boarded, its sign hanging crooked. The air smelled of stale beer and rot, and my nerves were raw, every creak making me grip my gun tighter. Holmes paused. At the door, his eyes scanning the street. "Stay sharp," he whispered. "This informant may be a friend or a trap." Inside, the tavern was dark, lit only by a single candle on a warped table. The air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked under our boots. A figure sat in the corner, cloaked with a scarf wrapped across their face, leaving only their eyes visible, dark and sharp like a bird's. "Mr. Holmes," they said, voice muffled but low, maybe a man's, maybe a woman's. "You're punctual." Holmes sat across from them, his face calm but his eyes like steel. "And you're cautious. Who are you? And what do you know about the Order of the Cross?" The informant leaned forward, their eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Call me Shadow. Names don't matter. I know you've got their manuscript, their keys, and their attention. The Order's scared, Holmes. You've stirred a hornet's nest." I stood by the door, revolver ready, watching for trouble. "What's in the final chamber?" I asked, my voice sharp. "And who's this keeper?" Shadow's eyes flicked to me, then back to Holmes. "The chamber's under the city, deeper than the vault you found. It holds the Order's heart, proof of crimes that could bring down half of Parliament. The keeper's one of their own, a scholar who guards the secrets. Harrow knows him, but he's running scared." Holmes's fingers tapped the table. "Harrow, where is he?" Shadow hesitated, then slid a folded paper across the table. "An address, a safe house in Spitalfields. He's hiding there, but the Order's hunting him. Move fast." Holmes took the paper, his eyes never leaving Shadow's. "Why help us? What's your stake in this?" Shadow's laugh was bitter. "I was one of them, like your Miss V. Saw too much, did too much. I want them broken, Holmes, but I'm not your friend, I'm just evening the score." Before Holmes could press further, a crash came from outside. A bottle breaking, then footsteps, fast and heavy. Shadow stood, pulling their cloak tight. "They found me! Go now!" Holmes grabbed my arm and we bolted for the back door as the front one splintered. 3 men burst in, one the broad man from the docks, club raised, another with a scarred face, our old enemy. The third was new, wiry, with a pistol. "Stop them!" the scarred man roared. We ran into the alley, the fog swallowing us. Shots rang out, bullets sparking off the bricks. Holmes pulled me through a maze of streets, the shouts fading but never stopping. My lungs burned, my legs heavy. But we didn't slow until we reached a quiet corner near Spitalfields. Holmes unfolded. The paper, a scribbled address for a boarding house on Brick Lane. "We find Harrow," he panted, his face grim. "But the Order's too close. Shadow's no ally, they're using us to draw the Order out." I nodded, catching my breath. "And the final chamber? Under the city? Another tunnel?" Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Likely near the Bank of England, tied to the old exchange." The manuscript hinted at a deeper network. "We'll know more when we get to Harrow." We reached Brick Lane, the boarding house, a sagging building with cracked windows. The landlady, a sour-faced woman, let us in after. Holmes slipped her a coin. Harrow's room was on the top floor, a cramped space with a single candle and a pile of books. Harrow sat on a cot, pale and trembling, a suitcase half-packed beside him. "Mr. Holmes," he gasped, jumping up. "How did you find me?" Holmes held up the paper. "A friend of yours, or ours. Talk, Harrow. Who's the keeper and where's the final chamber?" Harrow's eyes darted to the door. "They'll kill me. The Order. They know I've seen too much." Holmes stepped closer, his voice low and hard. "You're already dead if you don't help us. The keeper. Now." Harrow swallowed, his hands shaking. "His name's Dr. Elias Crane. A scholar, like me, but higher in the Order. He guards the final chamber under the old exchange's deepest cellar. It's locked with a code, not keys. The manuscript, you have it. It holds the code." Before Holmes could ask more, a thud shook the door. I drew my revolver, heart pounding. "They're here," I whispered. Holmes grabbed Harrow, pulling him toward a window. "Out now!" We climbed onto the fire escape, the metal creaking as shouts filled the room. The scarred man's voice barked orders and a shot splintered the window frame. We slid down the ladder, hitting the alley and running into the fog. Harrow stumbled, but Holmes kept him moving, dragging him through Spittlefield's maze. We lost the pursuers, but my nerves were raw, the fog hiding friend and foe alike. At a quiet corner, Holmes stopped, checking the manuscript. "Crane," he muttered. "And a code. We're close, Watson, but the order's closer." We hid, Harrow in a safe house Holmes knew, guarded by two of his irregulars. Back at 221B, Holmes spread the manuscript, searching for the code. "Numbers, symbols," he said, his voice tense. "It's here, Watson. The key to the final chamber." The fog pressed against the windows, the night alive with danger. The order was hunting, Harrow was a wreck, and Shadow's motives were murky. But the final chamber was within reach, and its secrets would shake London to its core. Chapter 11. A dangerous pursuit. The fog clung to London like a heavy cloak, muffling the clatter of late-night carriages and the distant cries of watchmen as Sherlock Holmes and I slipped through the shadows of Spitalfields. The air was cold, sharp with the tang of coal smoke and the Thames's muddy breath. My heart still raced from our narrow escape at the boarding house, where we'd dragged Mr. Harrow from the Order of the Cross's grasp. His trembling words echoed in my mind. Dr. Elias Crane, the keeper of the final chamber, hiding under the old Royal Exchange, locked by a code buried in the manuscript we carried. The 3 keys, brass, iron, and bronze, were safe in Holmes's pocket. But the order was closing in, their knives and guns too close for comfort. My revolver, heavy in my coat, was a constant reminder of the danger we faced. Holmes was silent, his face a sharp outline in the dim glow of a gas lamp. The manuscript, now tucked inside his coat with the stolen papers from the vault, held the code to the final chamber, a chamber that promised the Order's darkest secrets. "Crane is the key, Watson," Holmes had said back at 221B, his eyes burning with focus. "Find him and we unlock the truth." We'd left Harrow with 2 of Holmes's Baker Street irregulars, hidden in a safe house near Aldgate. Now we were hunting Crane, following a lead from the manuscript, a cryptic note about a scholar's den near the Old Exchange. Holmes was certain it meant a private library or study, likely in the city's heart, where Crane worked or hid. "He's no ordinary scholar," Holmes had warned. "He's the Order's gatekeeper, trusted with their deepest secrets. He'll be guarded." We moved through the fog, sticking to alleys to avoid prying eyes. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional drunk or stray dog, but I felt watched, my nerves raw from days of chases and fights. My shoulder ached, the bruise from the alley now a dull throb, but I kept pace with Holmes, his long strides cutting through the mist like a blade. We reached Threadneedle Street, near the Bank of England, the old Royal Exchange a dark shape in the fog. The manuscript pointed to a narrow building nearby, a private archive used by scholars and bankers. Its windows were dark, but a faint light flickered inside, like a candle left burning. Holmes paused, his eyes scanning the street. "Crane's there," he whispered. "But so are they. Look." I followed his gaze. A figure stood across the street, half hidden by a lamppost, a tall man, broad with a club in hand. The same brute from the docks and the tunnel. "The Order," I muttered, my hand on my revolver. "They're guarding him." Holmes nodded. "Or hunting him. Crane may be as much a target as we are. We need to get inside. Quietly." We circled the building, finding a back door in an alley piled with crates. Holmes worked his lockpick, the door clicking open with a soft creak. Inside, the air was musty, thick with the smell of old books and wax. Shelves loomed, packed with ledgers and manuscripts, and a single candle burned on a desk in the corner. A man sat there, hunched, scribbling furiously. Dr. Elias Crane, I assumed. He was older, with gray hair and a thin face, his hands shaking as he wrote. Holmes stepped forward, silent as a shadow. "Dr. Crane," he said, his voice low but firm. "We need to talk." Crane jumped, his pen clattering to the floor. His eyes were wide, panicked, darting between us. "Holmes, how did you shouldn't be here. They'll find you. They already have." Holmes said, glancing at the door. The Order of the Cross. You're their keeper, aren't you? The final chamber, what's the code? Crane's face paled. You don't understand. The chamber holds everything, proof of crimes, betrayals, names that could ruin empires. If you open it, they'll kill us all. I stepped closer, revolver, ready. They're already trying. Tell us, or we leave you to them. Before Crane could answer, a crash came from the front door. Wood splintering, boots stomping. They're here, Crane gasped, scrambling to gather his papers. Holmes grabbed him, pulling him toward a side door. Move, Watson! We ran, Crane stumbling between us as shouts filled the archive. The scarred man's voice cut through the noise. Find them! No one leaves! We burst into the alley, the fog swallowing us. Shots rang out, bullets sparking, off the bricks. Holmes dragged Crane through a maze of streets, my lungs burning as I kept up, revolver in hand. The fog was our ally, hiding us. But it hid our pursuers too. We ducked into a courtyard, crouching behind a low wall as footsteps pounded past. Crane was panting, clutching a leather notebook. The code, he whispered. It's in here. But you'll need me to use it. The chamber's lock. It's complex, tied to the Order's symbols. Holmes took the notebook, his eyes scanning it. Numbers and crosses, he muttered. A cipher like the others. Where's the chamber? Under the exchange, Crane said, his voice shaking. A hidden door in the deepest cellar. But they're guarding it. You'll never get through. Holmes's smile was grim. We'll see about that. Come with us or stay and face your masters. Crane nodded, his face gray with fear. We moved again, slipping through the fog to a safe house Holmes knew, a dingy room above a tavern in Bishopsgate. Inside, we barred the door, and Holmes spread the notebook on a table, its pages filled with numbers and circle and cross symbols. The code's here, he said, tracing a line, but it's incomplete. We need Crane's knowledge. I kept watch at the window, the fog thick outside. What's in the chamber, Crane? Why's the Order so desperate? Crane sank into a chair, his hands trembling. Documents, artifacts, proof of a conspiracy that's run London for centuries. Names of kings, lords, even clergy, tied to crimes you can't imagine. The Order protects them, controls them. If you open the chamber, it's war. Holmes's eyes gleamed. Then war it is. We'll crack the code and find the chamber, but first we lose the Order. A thud shook the door, and my heart leapt. I raised my revolver as the wood splintered, the scarred man's face appearing in the gap. Holmes, he roared. You can't hide forever. Holmes grabbed Crane and we ran for a back window, climbing onto a rickety roof. Shots echoed, but the fog hit us as we slid down a drainpipe, landing in an alley. We ran, Crane, gasping, until we reached a quiet street near the river. The Order's shouts faded, but I knew they weren't far. Holmes checked the notebook, his face set. The chamber's close, Watson. Tomorrow, we go back to the exchange, with the code and Crane. The Order's desperate, which means we're winning. I nodded, my hand still shaking. The fog swirled, hiding the city's secrets and its dangers. The final chamber was near, but so was the Order, and their knives were sharper than ever. Chapter 12. The Code of the Vault. The fog hung over London like a gray curtain, dimming the gas lamps and muffling the clatter of early morning carts as Sherlock Holmes and I hustled Dr. Elias Crane through the shadowed streets of Bishopsgate. The air was damp, thick with the Thames's muddy scent and the faint sting of coal smoke. My heart pounded from our narrow escape at the safe house, where the Order of the Cross had nearly cornered us. Crane, the Order's keeper, clutched his leather notebook, its pages holding the code to the final chamber beneath the old Royal Exchange. The 3 keys, brass, iron, and bronze, were safe in Holmes's pocket, but the weight of the Order's pursuit pressed on me like a storm cloud. My revolver, snug in my coat, was a cold comfort, my shoulder aching from days of bruises and fights. Holmes was grim, his eyes sharp as he scanned the alleys. Crane stumbled between us, his gray hair plastered with sweat, his face pale with fear. They'll find us, he muttered, his voice shaking. The Order, they never stop. Then we move faster, Holmes said, his tone hard. The chamber's under the exchange and your code will open it. Tell us what we're facing. Crane swallowed, clutching the notebook tighter. The chamber's locked with a dial, not keys. The code's in here. Numbers tied to the orders. Symbols, but the chamber it's guarded. Traps, men, maybe worse. I gripped my revolver, my nerves raw. Traps? What kind? Crane's eyes darted. Mechanical, blades, weights. The order doesn't trust men alone to guard their secrets. We reached Threadneedle Street, the old Royal Exchange looming in the fog like a sleeping giant. The streets were quiet, the city's bustle not yet awake, but I felt eyes watching, hidden in the mist. Holmes led us to the same side alley we'd used before, the rusted gate still ajar from our last visit. He checked for signs of tampering, his fingers brushing the lock. No fresh marks, he said, but they've been here. Stay sharp, Watson. We slipped inside, the air turning cold and musty, the staircase descending into the exchange's cellars. Our lantern's light flickered on damp stone walls, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. Crane's breathing was loud, his fear filling the space. Holmes held the notebook, its pages open to a sequence of numbers and circle and cross symbols. The code, he said, tracing a line. 5 numbers, tied to the order's history. We'll need to test it. The cellar was a maze of crates and barrels, the air thick with dust. We found the hidden panel from before, its 3 keyholes now useless with the door already open. Beyond it, the spiral staircase led deeper, to the gate where we'd seen the glow last time. The faint light was gone now, but voices echoed, low, sharp, like men arguing. Holmes dimmed the lantern, his face tense. The order's here, he whispered. We moved quietly. We crept down, the gate looming ahead, its iron bars carved with the circle and cross. Beyond it was a stone chamber, larger than the last, with a massive dial on the far wall, surrounded by more symbols. 2 men stood there, the broad man from the docks, club in hand, and a new figure, thin and cloaked, holding a lantern. The scarred man was missing, which made me uneasy. Holmes handed Crane the notebook. The code now. Crane's hand shook as he read the numbers. 73928. Holmes stepped to the dial, spinning it carefully, each click echoing like a heartbeat. I kept my revolver aimed at the gate, watching the 2 men. They hadn't seen us yet, but their voices were sharp, arguing about the keeper and the keys. The dial clicked a final time, and a low rumble shook the chamber. The wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage, its air colder, heavier, smelling of earth and metal. But before we could move, a sharp clang rang out, a trap springing. A blade swung from the ceiling, glinting in the lantern's light. Holmes shoved Crane aside, the blade missing us by inches, embedding in the stone floor. "Run!" Holmes hissed, pulling us into the passage. The 2 men turned, shouting, and footsteps pounded behind us. The passage twisted, its walls lined, with more symbols and another trap triggered, a heavy weight dropping from above. I dove, tackling Crane as the stone crashed, dust choking the air. We scrambled forward, the passage opening into a vast chamber, its walls lined with iron shelves, documents, sealed boxes, even gold bars glinting in the dark. In the center was another dial, larger with numbers and symbols carved deep. "The final chamber," Holmes said, his voice tight. "Crane, the code." Again. Crane fumbled with the notebook, but before he could speak, the broad man burst. In club raised. I fired my revolver, the shot grazing his leg, and he staggered, cursing. The cloaked figure followed, drawing a pistol. Holmes spun the dial, shouting numbers 73928 as I fired again, keeping the men back. The dial clicked and the shelves parted, revealing a hidden vault, its door ajar, stuffed with papers and artifacts. Holmes grabbed a leather case from inside, but the cloaked figure lunged, pistol aimed. "You're dead, Holmes," he snarled, voice muffled but familiar. I tackled him, my shoulder screaming, and the pistol fired, the bullet sparking off the wall. Holmes pulled me up, the case in hand, as Crane screamed, "More are coming!" Ran, the chamber shaking as another trap triggered, spikes shooting from the walls. We dodged, barely, the leather case clutched tight. The passage led to a side tunnel, its exit hidden by a grate near the river. We burst out, the fog swallowing us as shouts echoed behind. The broad man and the cloaked figure were still coming, but the mist hid our escape. We didn't stop until we reached a quiet alley near St. Paul's, panting, the case heavy in Holmes's hands. Crane was a wreck, his face gray. "You've got it," he gasped. "The order's heart, proof of everything. But they'll hunt you forever." Holmes opened the case, revealing letters, ledgers, and a sealed envelope marked with the circle and cross. "This is it, Watson," he said. "The order's secrets, names, crimes, power. But we're not done. There's more to uncover." Nodded, my hands shaking. "What now? They know we have it." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "We hide, we plan, and we strike. The order's exposed, but they're not broken. We take this to someone who can use it, someone outside their reach." The fog swirled, the city silent but alive with danger. The vault's secrets were ours, but the order was closer than ever, their knives sharp and their reach long. I checked my revolver, knowing the fight was far from over. Chapter 13. Echoes from the past. The fog was a thick veil over London, muffling the clink of distant carriages and the low hum of the Thames as Sherlock Holmes and I hurried through the shadowed streets near St. Paul's. The leather case, stuffed, with the Order of the Cross's secrets, letters, ledgers, and a sealed envelope marked with their circle and cross symbol, weighed heavy in Holmes's hands. My heart still raced from our escape from the final chamber beneath the old Royal Exchange, where we'd dodged traps and fought off the Order's men. Dr. Elias Crane, the trembling keeper, was hidden in a safe house, guarded by Holmes's irregulars. But the Order was hunting us, their reach as long as the city's shadows. My revolver, cold in my pocket, was my only comfort, my shoulder throbbing from days of bruises and brawls. Holmes was silent, his sharp eyes cutting through the fog as we moved toward a new safe house, a run-down flat in Clerkenwell, far from the Order's usual haunts. "We need time to study the case's contents," he'd said back at the exchange, his voice low but fierce. "These papers are the Order's heart, but they're also a map to their past and their weaknesses." The flat was a cramped, dusty place above a shuttered bakery, its windows cracked and curtains drawn. We barred the door, lit a single lamp, and spread the case's contents on a wobbly table. The papers were a tangle of secrets, letters between lords and criminals, ledgers of bribes paid to judges, even a note hinting at a royal scandal from decades ago. The sealed envelope, though, drew Holmes's eye. He broke its wax, revealing a single sheet with a list of names, dates, and a cryptic phrase. "The past speaks where the stones stand silent." I frowned, my head aching from lack of sleep. "Another riddle? What does it mean, Holmes?" He lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog outside. "The past, history, buried but not gone. The stones, a monument perhaps, or a graveyard. The Order's secrets go back centuries, Watson. This list," he tapped the paper, "names members from the 1700s, some still tied to families, in power today. We need to trace them." I sank into a chair, the weight of it all pressing down. "Trace them where? The museum's too dangerous now, and Harrow's barely holding together." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The stones suggest a physical place. London's full of old sites, churches, memorials, ruins. The phrase points to a specific one, likely tied to the Order's origins. We'll start with St. Dunstan in the east, a church bombed out years ago, its stones silent but standing." I rubbed my shoulder, uneasy. "And the Order? They're not giving up. The scarred man, the broad one, they'll be after us." Holmes nodded, his face grim. "Which is why we move now before they regroup. We leave Crane here guarded. The irregulars will watch for trouble." We left the flat at dawn, the fog thinning but still heavy, the city waking with the clatter of carts and shouts of vendors. St. Dunstan in the east was a ruin, its walls crumbled, its garden overgrown with weeds. The air smelled of damp earth and moss, and the silence was eerie, broken only by the distant river. Holmes moved like a hound, checking the stones for marks or clues. I kept my revolver ready, scanning the fog for shadows. "There," Holmes said, kneeling by a cracked gravestone near the church's tower. A faint circle and cross was carved into it, almost hidden by lichen. He brushed it clean, revealing a date, 1723. "The order's mark from their early days," he said. "This is no coincidence." I leaned closer, my heart quickening. Grave? Is the clue inside?" Holmes shook his head. "Not a grave, a marker. The stones stand silent, but they point to something." He tapped the gravestone, then stood eyeing the tower. "Up there. The order hid things in high places, safe from floods and thieves." We climbed the tower's broken stairs, the stone crumbling under our boots. At the top, a small alcove was hidden behind loose bricks. Holmes pried them free, revealing a tin box, rusted but intact. Inside was a folded parchment, its ink faded but clear. A map of London, older than any I'd seen, with a red X near the Tower of London. A note was scrawled beside it. "The first truth lies where the ravens guard." I stared, my mind racing. The tower again? We started there with the first key. Holmes's smile was sharp. "The order loves cycles, Watson. Their secrets loop back, hiding in plain sight. The ravens, guardians of the kingdom and now of the order's past. We need to return, but carefully. The order will expect it." We slipped out of the church, the fog our shield, as we headed back to Clerkenwell. But as we turned a corner, a figure stepped from the mist. The scarred man, his silver-tipped cane gleaming, two others behind him. "Holmes," he snarled, his scar twisting. "You're persistent, but you're out of time." I drew my revolver, but Holmes grabbed my arm. "Not here," he hissed, pulling me into an alley. We ran, the fog swallowing their shouts, but footsteps pounded behind us. A shot rang out, grazing my coat, and I fired back, the bullet lost in the mist. We ducked through a market, dodging stalls and crates, until the sounds faded. At the safe house, Crane was pacing, his face gray. "You're back," he gasped. "Did you find it?" Holmes held up the map. "A clue pointing to the tower, but the order's close. Tell us more about their past. Why the ravens?" Crane sank onto the cot, his hands shaking. "The order began in the 1700s, tied to the tower's keepers. They used the ravens' legend, guardians of the realm, to hide their first cache. The map, it's real. But the towers watched, always." Holmes studied the map, his eyes narrowing. "Then we go tonight under cover of darkness. The order's wounded but not broken. We find the cache, and we learn their origins." I checked my revolver, my heart heavy. The fog outside swirled, hiding the city's secrets and its dangers. The tower waited, its ravens silent but knowing, and the order's past was calling us back to where it all began. Chapter 14. The Traitor's Gambit. The fog was a cold gray veil over London, wrapping the city in silence as Sherlock Holmes and I crept toward the Tower of London. It was past midnight, the air sharp with the Thames's muddy smell and the faint bite of coal smoke. My heart thumped hard, the weight of our latest find. A tattered map from St. Dunstan in the east, marked with a red X and the words, "The first truth lies where the ravens guard." Heavy in my mind. The three keys, brass, iron, and bronze, jangled in Holmes's pocket, their purpose unclear now that we'd opened the vault. Dr. Elias Crane, the Order of the Cross's keeper, was still hidden in the Clerkenwell safe house, his notebook and nervous whispers guiding us back to the tower where this mystery had begun. My revolver, snug in my coat, was a grim comfort, my shoulder aching from days of fights and chases. Holmes was quiet, his sharp eyes piercing the fog as we moved through the dark streets near Tower Hill. The map pointed to a cache hidden where the ravens roosted, tied to the order's origins in the 1700s. "The tower's a fortress, Watson," he'd said earlier, poring over the map at the safe house. "But it's also a vault of secrets, older than the order itself. This cache will tell us who they were and who they are now. The scarred man's pursuit in the fog hours ago had left my nerves raw. The order was desperate. Their men, broad, cloaked, or scarred, always a step behind us. Crane's words about the Order's beginnings, tied to the tower's keepers, and the Raven legend, made this return feel like a trap. But Holmes was undeterred. "They expect us to hesitate," he'd said. "So we don't." We reached the tower's outer wall, its stones looming black and wet in the fog. The ravens were silent, their cages dark, but I felt their eyes like they knew we were here. Holmes led us to a side gate used by workers, its lock rusted but sturdy. He worked his lockpick, the gate creaking open with a sound that made me wince. "Quietly, Watson," he whispered. "The Order's watching, but the fog's our ally." Inside, the tower grounds were still, the fog muffling our steps on the cobblestones. The white tower stood ahead, its bulk a shadow in the mist. Holmes moved toward the raven cages, his lantern dimmed to a faint glow. The map's red X marked a spot near the Trader's Gate, where we'd found the first key weeks ago. "The Order loves patterns," Holmes said, his voice low. "They hide their secrets in circles, looping back to the start." We reached the Trader's Gate, its arch dark and damp, the river lapping below. Holmes knelt by a stone slab, the same one that had hidden the brass key. The circle and cross symbol was carved there, faint but clear. He pressed it, and a low click sounded, revealing a shallow hole. Inside was a small iron box, its lid engraved with the same symbol. Holmes opened it with a tool, revealing a folded letter yellowed with age and a single silver ring etched with a raven's head. I leaned closer, my heart racing. "What's it say?" Holmes unfolded the letter, his eyes scanning the faded ink. "Names, founders of the Order from 1723. Merchants, lords, a priest, and a warning. The traitor's gambit will undo us all." I frowned, the fog chilling my skin. "Traitor's gambit? What's that?" Holmes tucked the letter into his coat. "A betrayal, Watson. Someone in the Order turned against them long ago. This ring, it's a mark of rank, maybe the traitor's. The cash is a warning or a confession." Before I could ask more, a soft scrape echoed, a boot on stone. I spun, revolver drawn, as a figure stepped from the fog. It was Miss V, her veil gone, her dark eyes wide with fear. "Holmes," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You found it, but they're here." Holmes's face hardened. "You led them to us." She shook her head, stepping closer. "No. I followed you to warn you. The scarred man, he knows about the cash. They're coming now." As if on cue, shouts broke the silence, and shadows moved in the fog. 3 men, the scarred man leading, his silver-tipped cane glinting. "Holmes!" he roared. "The ring, the letter, hand them over." I fired a shot, the bullet sparking off the stones, and the men scattered, taking cover. Holmes grabbed Miss V, pulling her behind a wall as we ran toward the gate. "Stay low," he hissed. A shot rang out, grazing my sleeve, and I fired back, my heart pounding. The fog hit us, but it hid them too, their footsteps closing in. We reached the gate, but the scarred man was faster, cutting us off. "You're trapped," he snarled, raising his cane. Miss V screamed, and I tackled him, my shoulder screaming as we hit the ground. His cane swung, catching my arm, but Holmes was there, wrenching it away. Miss V bolted, disappearing into the fog, her footsteps fading. The other 2 men charged, one with a knife, the other a club. I fired again, hitting the knife man's leg, and he fell, cursing. Holmes grappled with the clubman, tripping him with a quick move. We ran, the scarred man's shouts echoing as we slipped through the gate and into the fog, the letter and ring safe in Holmes's coat. We didn't stop until we reached a quiet alley near the river, panting, the fog our shield. "Miss V," I gasped, clutching my arm where the cane had struck. Was she helping us or betraying us? Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Both, perhaps. She's playing her own game, Watson. The traitor's gambit. It's not just the past. She's betraying the Order, but for her own reasons." Back at the Clerkenwell safe house, Crane was pacing, his face gray. "You found it?" he asked, eyeing the letter and ring. "That's the Founder's ring. The Order's leaders wear it. The letter, it names the first traitor, a man who tried to expose them." Holmes spread the letter on the table. Its words, chilling. A founder betrayed by his own hid proof of the Order's crimes in the tower, hoping to destroy them. The gambit failed, Holmes said, but it's our weapon now. The Order's past will break their present. I checked my revolver, my arm throbbing. What's next? The chamber's open, the cash found, where do we go? Holmes's smile was grim. We find the traitor's proof. The letter hints at another hiding place tied to the ring. The towers. Secrets aren't done with us. The fog pressed against the windows, the night alive with danger. The Order was wounded, but their knives were sharp, and Miss V's motives were a riddle. The traitor's gambit was our only edge, and we'd play it to the end. Chapter 15. The shadowed truth, the fog was unrelenting, cloaking London in a damp gray haze as Sherlock Holmes and I slipped through the narrow alleys of Whitechapel. The hour was late, well past 2 in the morning, and the city was eerily quiet, save for the distant clatter of a night watchman's boots and the low murmur of the Thames. My arm throbbed where the scarred man's cane had struck during our escape from the Tower of London, and my shoulder ached from weeks of bruises and brawls. My revolver, heavy in my coat, was a constant reminder of the danger closing in. The letter and silver raven ring we'd found in the tower's cache, along with the 3 keys, brass, iron, and bronze, were tucked inside Holmes's coat, each a piece of the Order of the Cross's dark puzzle. Dr. Elias Crane, the Order's terrified keeper, remained in the Clerkenwell safe house, his notebook guiding us. But Miss V's betrayal, or half-betrayal, gnawed at me like a bad wound. Holmes was silent, his sharp eyes cutting through the fog as we moved toward a new lead. The letter from the tower, written by the Order's first traitor in 1723, hinted at another hiding place, a sanctuary of stone where the traitor's proof, evidence of the Order's earliest crimes, was hidden. The ring is the key, Holmes had said, studying its raven etching back at the safe house. It's not just a symbol, it's a marker, pointing to a place tied to the Order's origins. We were headed to All Hallows by the Tower, an ancient church near the tower, its stones older than the city itself. The letter's phrase, the sanctuary of stone, fit its history, and Holmes was certain the church hid the traitor's proof. The Order began with the tower's keepers, he'd said. All Hallows is close, its crypts untouched for centuries. It's the perfect hiding place. The fog thickened as we reached the church, its spire a faint shadow above. The air smelled of damp stone and river mud, and the silence was heavy, broken only by the soft caw of a raven somewhere in the dark. My nerves were raw, every shadow a threat after the scarred man's attack. Holmes, I whispered, my hand on my revolver. What if Miss V sold us out? She knew we were at the tower. Holmes's eyes flicked to me, sharp and unyielding. Miss V is a wild card, Watson. She's betrayed the Order, but her motives are her own. If she's led them here, we'll deal with it. For now, we trust the traitor's letter. The church's side door was locked, but Holmes's lockpick made quick work of it. Inside, the air was cold, thick with the scent of wax and old wood. Our lantern's dim glow lit the stone walls carved with faded names and dates. The crypt was below, its entrance a narrow stair behind the altar. Holmes led the way, the silver ring in his hand, its raven etching catching the light. The crypt was a maze of stone vaults, the air heavy with dust and decay. Tombs lined the walls, their inscriptions worn by time. Holmes moved to a corner where a small altar stood, its base carved with a faint circle and cross, the Order's mark. Here, he said, kneeling. The ring fit into a groove in the hat, stone, and with a soft click a panel slid open, revealing a leather pouch. Inside was a bundle of papers, brittle and yellowed, and a small brass plaque engraved with names. Founders of the Order, dated 1723. I leaned closer, my heart pounding. This is it? The traitor's proof? Holmes nodded, scanning the papers. Letters, confessions, a list of crimes, smuggling, treason, murders sanctioned by lords. The traitor hid this to destroy the Order, but he failed. This could finish his work. Before I could reply, a low creak echoed from the stairs. I spun, revolver drawn, as a figure stepped into the crypt. Miss V, her veil gone, her face pale but determined. "Holmes," she said, her voice low. "You found it, but you're not safe." Holmes stood, the papers in his hand. "You've followed us again? Why? To help? Or to lead the order to us?" Her eyes flashed. "I want them gone, Holmes. The order. They've taken everything from me. But they're here. I tried to lose them, but..." Shouts cut her off, echoing from above. Boots stomped and the scarred man's voice rang out. "They're below. Get them." I raised my revolver, my heart hammering, as 3 men burst into the crypt. The scarred man, his silver-tipped cane raised, the broad man from the docks with a club, and a new figure, cloaked, holding a pistol. "Give us the proof." The scarred man snarled, lunging at Holmes. I fired, the shot grazing his shoulder, and he staggered, cursing. Miss V dove behind a tomb, shouting, "Run!" Holmes grabbed me, pulling me toward a side passage as the broad man swung his club, missing by inches. The passage was narrow, its walls slick with damp. We ran, the lantern swinging as shots echoed behind us. Miss V kept pace, her breath ragged. "They'll kill us all," she gasped. "The proof. It's everything they fear." Holmes led us through twists and turns, the passage sloping upward. A trap triggered, a grate slamming down, but Holmes shoved it open, his strength surprising me. We emerged in a churchyard, the fog thick, the air cold. The shouts faded, but I knew the order wasn't far. We didn't stop, weaving through alleys, until we reached a quiet street near the river. Holmes clutched the papers, his face grim. "The traitor's proof," he said, panting. "It names the order's founders and their crimes. With this we can expose them." Miss V leaned against a wall, her face pale. "You don't know what you're up against. The order's reach. Lords, judges, even police, they'll bury you." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Then we find someone they can't touch. A journalist, perhaps, or a rival power. The truth is, our weapon." I checked my revolver, my arm aching. "What about her?" I nodded at Miss V. "Can we trust her?" She met my gaze, her eyes hard. "I've betrayed the order, Watson. That makes me as hunted as you. Help me, and I'll help you." Holmes studied her, then nodded. "For now you're with us, but one wrong move—" "I know," she said, her voice steady. "The sanctuary's proof is yours. Use it." Back at the Clerkenwell safe house, Crane was waiting, his face gray with fear. "You got it?" he asked, eyeing the papers. Holmes spread them out, revealing names that matched the vault's ledgers. Lords, merchants, a priest, all tied to crimes that shook me. The brass plaque listed the order's first leaders, their legacy still alive. "The order's past is their weakness," Holmes said. "We expose this and their power crumbles, but we need a plan, Watson. The order's watching and they're not done." The fog pressed against the windows, the night alive with unseen threats. Miss V sat silent, her motives still a riddle. The traitor's proof was ours, but the order's knives were sharp, and the fight for London's secrets was far from over. Chapter 16. The Final Confrontation. The fog had lifted, leaving London's streets glistening under the faint glow of gas lamps as Sherlock Holmes, Miss V, and I moved swiftly through the pre-dawn shadows of Clerkenwell. The air was cold, sharp, with the Thames's muddy tang and the bite of early winter. My arm ached where the scarred man's cane had struck, and my shoulder throbbed from weeks of chases and fights. My revolver, heavy in my coat, was loaded and ready, a grim necessity after our escape from All Hallows by the Tower. The traitor's proof, papers and a brass plaque naming the Order of the Cross's founders and their crimes, was tucked inside Holmes's coat alongside the 3 keys and the letter from the tower. Dr. Elias Crane, the Order's terrified keeper, was still hidden in the safe house, his knowledge of the Order's secrets our guide. But the Order was closing in, their reach as vast as the city itself. Holmes was grim, his sharp eyes scanning every alley as we headed toward Fleet Street. The traitor's proof was our weapon, but it needed a voice. "We take this to the Times," Holmes had said at the safe house, his voice low and resolute. "A journalist can expose the Order's crimes. Names, dates, crimes that reach Parliament. The Order can't silence the press, not all of it." Miss V walked beside us, her face pale but set, her dark eyes darting with every sound. Her uneasy alliance held, but her motives remained a shadow. "The order has men in Fleet Street," she warned, her voice low. "Editors, printers. They've bought loyalty. You'll need to be careful." I gripped my revolver, my nerves frayed. "Careful? They've tried to kill us at every turn. The scarred man, the broad one, they're not stopping." Holmes's lips twitched. "Which is why we don't ask permission, Watson. We find a man with a spine, someone who'll print the truth no matter the cost." Fleet Street was quiet, its newspaper offices dark, their presses silent until morning. We reached the Times's building, a grand stone structure with barred windows. Holmes knew a journalist, Mr. Thomas Reddington, a stubborn man who'd tangled with powerful enemies before. "He's our best chance," Holmes said, picking the side door's lock. "But we must move fast." Inside, the air was thick with ink and paper, the faint hum of a distant press vibrating through the floor. We climbed a narrow stair to Reddington's office, a cluttered room stacked with papers and books. Reddington, a wiry man with graying hair and sharp eyes, looked up from his desk, startled. "Holmes? What's this, breaking in at this hour?" Holmes set the traitor's proof on the desk, his voice crisp. "Proof of a conspiracy, Reddington. The Order of the Cross. Lords, judges, criminals, running London for centuries. Names, crimes, evidence. Print it, and you'll shake the city." Reddington scanned the papers, his face paling as he read names: a duke, a banker, a bishop. "This is dynamite, Holmes, but dangerous. They'll come for me, my paper, my family." Miss V stepped forward, her voice fierce. "They're coming anyway. Expose them or they win." I kept watch at the door, revolver in hand, my heart pounding. The building was too quiet, the shadows too deep. "Holmes," I whispered. "We're not alone." Before he could reply, a crash echoed below, glass shattering, boots stomping. The scarred man's voice cut through the noise. "They're here! Find them!" I cursed, my grip tightening. The order had tracked us, faster than I'd feared. Holmes grabbed Reddington's arm. "Take the papers, hide them, print them. We'll hold them off." Reddington nodded, stuffing the proof into a satchel and slipping out a back door. Miss V drew a small knife from her cloak, her eyes hard. "I'll fight with you," she said. "They've taken enough." We barred the office door, but it wouldn't hold long. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, and the door shook as the broad man from the dock slammed against it. I fired through the wood, hearing a grunt, but more voices joined the fray. "Holmes!" the scarred man roared. "You can't run forever." Holmes overturned a desk, creating a barricade. "Watson, the window, our only chance." He smashed, the glass revealing a fire escape leading to the roof. We climbed out, Miss V behind us as the door splintered. The scarred man burst in, his silver-tipped cane raised, followed by 3 others. 2 new men with knives, one with a pistol. I fired, hitting the pistol man's arm, and he fell back. Holmes led us across the roof, the fog swirling below, the city a blur of lights. Shots rang out, bullets sparking off the tiles. Miss V stumbled, a bullet grazing her leg, but she kept moving, her face set with pain. "Keep going," she gasped. We reached a skylight, Holmes prying it open. We dropped into a printing room, the presses silent, the air heavy with ink. The order's men were close, their shouts echoing. Holmes barred the door, but it wouldn't. "We need to buy Reddington time," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. Miss V leaned against a press, her leg bleeding. "I'll hold them here," she said, gripping her knife. "You two, get out, finish this." Holmes shook his head. "You're coming with us." She smiled, bitter but resolute. "I betrayed them, Holmes. This is my price. Go." Before I could argue, the door buckled, and the scarred man charged in, his cane swinging. I fired, missing, and he tackled me, my revolver skidding across the floor. Holmes fought off another man, his fists quick and precise. Miss V lunged at the scarred man, her knife slashing his arm, but he struck back, his cane catching her side. She fell, gasping, blood pooling. "Watson!" Holmes shouted, pulling me free. We ran for a side door, the scarred man's curses chasing us. Miss V's voice, weak but fierce, called out, "End them, Holmes!" We burst into an alley, the fog swallowing us. My heart ached for Miss V, but there was no time to turn back. We ran, weaving through Fleet Street's maze until we reached a quiet corner near the river. Holmes leaned against a wall, panting, his face grim. "She bought us time," he said. "Reddington has the proof. If he prints it, the order's done." I nodded, my hands shaking. "And Miss V, she might be alive or dead," Holmes said, his voice hard. "She chose her path, we choose ours." Back at the Clerkenwell safe house, Crane was waiting, his face pale. "You did it?" he asked, eyeing our empty hands. Holmes nodded. "The proof's with the Times. If Reddington's brave, it'll be in tomorrow's paper." I checked my revolver, my arm throbbing. The fog outside was thinning, the city waking. The Order's secrets were exposed, but their knives were still sharp, and Miss V's fate was a shadow on my heart. The fight was over, but the echoes of the past would linger as long as London stood. Chapter 17. The Aftermath of Truth. The dawn broke over London with a pale, watery light, the fog thinning to reveal streets slick with overnight rain. Inside the Clerkenwell safe house, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of damp wood and the lingering tension of our escape from Fleet Street. My arm stung where the scarred man's cane had struck, and my shoulder throbbed from weeks of relentless pursuit. My revolver, now empty, lay on the table, its weight no longer a comfort, but a reminder of the blood spilled. Sherlock Holmes stood by the window, his sharp silhouette framed against the gray sky, his eyes scanning the street below. Dr. Elias Crane, the Order of the Cross's former keeper, sat hunched on a cot, his face gaunt with fear and exhaustion. The traitor's proof, letters, ledgers, and the brass plaque naming the Order's founders, was now in the hands of Thomas Reddington at the Times. But Miss V's sacrifice in the printing room haunted me, her fate a shadow I couldn't shake. Holmes turned, his face grim but focused. "The papers will hit the streets soon, Watson," he said, his voice low. "If Reddington holds his nerve, the Order's secrets, names, crimes, centuries of corruption, will be exposed. The question is what they'll do next." I rubbed, my eyes the ache of sleepless nights catching up. "They're wounded, Holmes. The scarred man, the broad one, they took a beating, but they've got reach. Lords, judges, police, will the paper really stop them?" Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog we'd fled through. "The Order thrives in shadows, Watson. Light is their enemy. The Times has a wide reach, and Reddington's stubborn. If he prints the proof, the public will demand answers. Even the Order can't silence a city." Crane stirred, his voice shaky. "You don't know them. They'll strike back. Killings, bribes, anything to bury this. I've seen it. They've survived worse." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Not this time. The traitor's proof, the vault's papers, your knowledge, they're a chain around the Order's neck. We just need to pull it tight." A knock at the door made me jump, my hand reaching for the empty revolver before I remembered. Holmes signaled for silence, drawing a small knife from his coat. He opened the door a crack, then relaxed, letting in Wiggins, one of his Baker Street irregulars. The boy was soaked, his cap askew, but his grin was wide. "It's done, Mr. Holmes. The Times is out. Front page, big letters. Secret society exposed. They're selling like hotcakes." Holmes took the damp newspaper Wiggins offered, spreading it on the table. The headline screamed, "Conspiracy unearthed. Lords and criminals linked in secret order." Reddington's article laid it bare. Names from the traitor's proof, crimes from the vault's ledgers, even the circle and cross symbol sketched in ink. My heart raced as I read, the weight of our fight sinking in. "It's real," I muttered. "They can't hide now." Crane peered at the paper, his hands trembling. "They'll come for us. Reddington, you, me, anyone who knows." Holmes folded the paper, his face hard. "Then we stay ahead. The Order's wounded, but not dead. We need to find their leaders, the ones above the scarred man. The proof names founders, but their heirs are still active." I frowned, my mind on Miss V. And her? She gave her life for this. Was she really with us, or playing her own game? Holmes's gaze darkened. Miss V was a traitor to the order, but her motives were hers. She wanted them broken, but at what cost we may never know. Her sacrifice bought us time. Let's not waste it. We left Crane with Wiggins and 2 other irregulars, instructions to move him if danger came. Holmes and I headed to Baker Street, the streets now buzzing with newsboys shouting about the scandal. People clustered, reading papers, their voices a mix of shock and anger. The order's secrets were no longer theirs, and London was waking to the truth. At 221B, Mrs. Hudson greeted us with wide eyes, a copy of the Times in her hands. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, is this your doing? It's all anyone's talking about." Holmes brushed past, heading for his desk. "No time for chatter, Mrs. Hudson. Tea, please, and lock the door." He spread the traitor's proof and vault papers, cross-referencing names with the article. "The order's leaders won't sit idle," he said. "They'll try to discredit Reddington, silence witnesses, or worse." I sank into my chair, the weight of it all crushing. "Who's left to fight? The scarred man's hurt. The broad one's down. Miss V's gone. Who's pulling their strings?" Holmes tapped a name on the list. A Lord Haverford mentioned in both the traitor's proof and the vault's ledgers. "Haverford's alive, Watson. A reclusive peer, but powerful. His family's tied to the order since its founding. If anyone's leading them now, it's him." A loud knock shook the door, and I grabbed my revolver, forgetting it was empty. Mrs. Hudson's voice came through. "A gentleman, Mr. Holmes, says it's urgent." Holmes opened the door, revealing a man in a dark coat. Reddington, his face pale, a bandage on his hand. "They tried to kill me," Reddington said, collapsing into a chair. "Last night after you left, men broke into my house. Knives, guns. I got out, but they're after me. The paper's out, but the order's not done." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "You've struck a blow, Reddington. Now we finish it. Lord Haverford, he's the head." "Where is he?" Reddington shook his head. "Haverford's a ghost. Lives in a manor outside London, guarded like a fortress. But there's talk. He's meeting allies tonight at the old dock warehouses in Limehouse. They're planning something big." Holmes stood, his face set. "Then we go to Limehouse. Watson, reload your revolver. Reddington, stay here with Mrs. Hudson. The order's desperate, which makes them dangerous." I loaded my gun, my hands steady despite the fear. The streets were alive with the scandal's fallout, but the order's shadow loomed larger. We took a cab to Limehouse, the Thames's stench growing stronger as we neared the docks. The warehouses were dark hulks, their windows boarded, the air thick with tar and salt. Holmes led us to a warehouse with a faint light leaking from a crack. We crept closer, peering through a broken board. Inside, a dozen men stood around a table, Lord Haverford, old but commanding, at the head. The scarred man was there, arm bandaged, and others I didn't know, their faces hard. "The paper's a setback," Haverford said, his voice cold. "But we silence it. Kill Reddington, Holmes, anyone who knows. The order endures." I gripped my revolver, rage boiling. Holmes signaled for quiet, but a board creaked under my foot. Eyes turned, and the scarred man shouted, "They're here!" Chaos erupted. Men drew weapons, and we ran, bullets sparking off the walls. We dodged through the docks, the fog returning to hide us. Shots rang out, but we lost them in the maze of crates and ropes. Back at 201B, Holmes was grim. "Haverford's the head, Watson. We've seen their face. Tomorrow we take the fight to him." The city hummed with the scandal, but the order's knives were still sharp. The truth was out, but the war wasn't won. I checked my revolver, ready for the final fight. Chapter 18. The Manor of Secrets. The night was cold and starless, a thin mist curling through the countryside as Sherlock Holmes and I crouched in the shadows of a hedgerow, the dark bulk of Lord Haverford's manor looming ahead. We'd left, London's clamor behind, taking a late train to a quiet station outside the city, where the air smelled of damp earth and pine. My arm still ached from the scarred man's blow at the tower. and my shoulder throbbed with every move. But my revolver was loaded, its weight steadying my nerves. The traitor's proof, now public through the Times, had shaken the Order of the Cross, but Lord Haverford, their leader, was rallying his forces. The warehouse meeting in Limehouse had confirmed it. He was the head, and this manor, guarded like a fortress, was his stronghold. Dr. Elias Crane remained hidden in Clerkenwell, protected by Holmes's irregulars, while Thomas Reddington, the journalist, stayed safe at 221B under Mrs. Hudson's watchful eye. Holmes was a silhouette beside me, his sharp eyes fixed on the manor's lit windows. "Haverford's desperate," he whispered, his voice low as the wind. "The paper exposed his allies, but he's not running. He's gathering what's left of the order here, planning a counterstrike. We end this tonight, Watson." I nodded, my heart pounding. "The scarred man's with him, maybe others. How do we get in? The place is a maze and they'll be armed." Holmes's lips twitched, a faint smile. "We use their arrogance. They think we're scared, hiding in London. The manor's guarded but not impenetrable. There's a servants' entrance, less watched, less secure. We'd scouted the grounds earlier under cover of dusk. The manor was old, its stone walls ivy-clad, surrounded by a high fence and patrolled by men with lanterns and guns. Reddington's tip about the Limehouse meeting had given us Haverford's location, and Holmes's knowledge of old estates pointed to a weak spot, a side gate used for deliveries hidden by overgrown shrubs. "The order's strength is secrecy," Holmes had said on the train. "Strip that away and they're just men." We crept forward, the mist dampening our coats, muffling our steps on the gravel. The side gate was where Holmes had predicted, its lock rusted but sturdy. He worked his lockpick, the gate creaking open with a sound that made me wince. No shouts came, no lanterns swung our way. We slipped inside, moving through a kitchen garden to a servant's door. Holmes picked that lock too, and we entered a dark hallway, the air heavy with wax and old wood. The manor was quiet, but not empty. Low voices drifted from a distant room, and the faint clink of glass suggested a meeting. Holmes led the way, his knife in hand, my revolver ready. We passed a staircase, its banister carved with ravens, a nod to the order's symbol, chilling in its boldness. "They're confident," Holmes whispered. "Too confident." We reached a heavy oak door, light seeping beneath it. Holmes pressed his ear to the wood, then signaled for silence. Inside, Lord Haverford's voice was clear, cold, and commanding. "The Times is a nuisance, but we've survived worse. Silence Reddington, kill Holmes and bury the proof. The order endures." I gripped my revolver, rage boiling. Holmes's eyes gleamed and he pushed the door open, stepping into a grand study lit by a roaring fire. Haverford, tall and silver-haired, stood at a table, maps and papers spread before him. The scarred man was there, his arm bandaged, his silver-tipped cane leaning against a chair. Two others, hard-faced men with pistols, flanked them. All froze as we entered, weapons half drawn. "Lord Haverford," Holmes said, his voice like ice. "Your order's time is up. The proof is public. Your allies exposed. Surrender or face the consequences." Haverford's eyes narrowed, a smile curling his lips. Holmes, bold but foolish. "You're in my house, outnumbered. The orders reach is longer than you think." The scarred man lunged, his cane swinging, but I fired, the shot grazing his leg. He fell cursing, and the other men drew their pistols. Holmes dove behind a table, overturning it as bullets splintered the wood. I fired again, hitting one man's shoulder, and he dropped his gun. Haverford grabbed a sword from the wall, its blade glinting, and charged at Holmes. I tackled Haverford, my shoulder screaming as we hit the floor. The sword skidded away and he fought like a cornered animal, his fists hard and precise. Holmes grappled with the second gunman, disarming him with a quick twist. The scarred man crawled for his cane, but I kicked it away, pressing my revolver to his head. "Stay down," I growled. Haverford laughed, breathless, pinned beneath me. "You can't stop us, Watson. The order's bigger than me, than this. Manor, kill me and others rise." Holmes stood, dusting off his coat, the gunman unconscious at his feet. "Perhaps, but you're their head, Haverford. Without you, they falter. The papers, the proof, the public, they'll tear your order apart. A noise came from the hall. Boots, shouts, more men drawn by the gunfire. Holmes grabbed Haverford, dragging him toward a side door. "Move, Watson!" We ran, Haverford struggling, through a servant's passage to a back staircase. Shots echoed, bullets sparking off the walls, but the mist outside hid our escape. We reached the garden, the manor's lights fading in the fog. Haverford was silent now, his face pale but defiant. We bound his hands with rope from Holmes's pack, dragging him to a cart we'd hidden nearby. The train back to London was a blur. Haverford watched by Holmes's knife. My revolver reloaded, and ready. At Scotland Yard, we handed Haverford to Inspector Lestrade, who'd read the Times and was eager to act. "This is big, Holmes," Lestrade said, eyeing Haverford's glare. "The names in that paper, half the city's in an uproar. We'll need more than this to bring them all down." Holmes nodded. "Start with him. The Manor's papers, the vault's ledgers, they're yours to seize." "The order's crumbling, Lestrade." "Finish it." Back at 2 on 21B, dawn was breaking. The city alive with newsboys shouting about arrests and scandals. Reddington was safe, his article sparking investigations across London. Crane was moved to a new safe house, his knowledge aiding Lestrade's men. Miss V's fate remained a shadow, her sacrifice a weight I carried. Holmes sat by the fire, pipe in hand. "The order's not gone, Watson," he said, his voice low. "But we've struck a mortal blow. Haverford's fall, the proof's light. They'll scatter for now." I checked my revolver, the fight's echoes lingering. "And us? What's next?" Holmes's smile was faint but sharp. "We watch, we wait. London's secrets never sleep, and neither do we." The city hummed outside, its shadows lighter but never gone. The order was broken, but its echoes would linger as long as the Thames flowed. Chapter 19. Whispers of the Fallen. The late autumn rain drummed softly on the windows of 221B Baker Street, a steady rhythm that matched the quiet unease settling over London. It was early evening, 3 days since we'd dragged Lord Haverford to Scotland Yard, his capture a hammer blow to the Order of the Cross. The Times's exposé, fueled by the traitor's proof and the vault's ledgers, had unleashed a storm. Arrests of lords and bankers, investigations into judges, and whispers of scandal reaching Parliament's halls. My arm was healing, the bruise from the scarred man's cane fading, but my shoulder still ached, a reminder of the weeks spent dodging bullets and blades. My revolver, cleaned and reloaded, rested in its drawer, but I kept it close, the order's shadow lingering like the damp chill in the air. Sherlock Holmes sat by the fire, his pipe sending curls of smoke into the dim room, his sharp eyes fixed on a stack of letters from Inspector Lestrade. Dr. Elias Crane had been moved to a secure location, his testimony aiding the Yard's raids on order safehouses. Thomas Reddington, the journalist, was under guard, his articles still stoking public outrage. But Miss V's fate gnawed at me, her sacrifice in the printing room, her blood on the floor, her final words. "End them, Holmes." Was she dead? Or had she slipped away, a ghost like the fog? Holmes set a letter down, his voice breaking the silence. "The order's crumbling, Watson, but not gone. Lestrade's found their men in hiding, small cells scattered across London. Haverford's silent, but his lieutenants are still out there." I leaned forward, the fire's warmth doing little to ease my unease. "The scarred man? He's alive, isn't he? And the broad one, they weren't at the manor?" Holmes nodded, his face grim. "Likely. The order's structure is like a hydra. Cut one head, another grows. But the public's anger, the Yard's pressure, it's squeezing them. We need to find the last threads before they regroup." A knock at the door made me tense, my hand twitching toward the drawer. Mrs. Hudson entered, her face pale, holding a small, sealed envelope. "This came, Mr. Holmes. No sender, just left at the door." Holmes took it, his fingers tracing the wax seal, a circle and cross, faint but unmistakable. My heart sank. "They're still watching," I muttered. He broke the seal, unfolding. A single sheet. The handwriting was sharp, hurried. The order falls, but its heart beats on. Seek the widow's lament where the river bends. She knows. No signature, but the paper smelled faintly of lavender. Miss V's scent. Holmes's eyes gleamed. She's alive, Watson. Or someone wants us to think so. The widow's lament, another riddle, pointing to a place by the Thames. I frowned, my mind racing. The river bends. Near Wapping, maybe. There's an old tavern, the Widow's Tears by the docks. Smugglers used it years ago. Holmes stood, grabbing his coat. Exactly. The order's remnants are hiding there. Or Miss V is drawing us to them. Either way we go, now. We left 221B, the rain soaking our hats as we took a cab to Wapping. The Thames was a dark ribbon, its banks lined with warehouses and rotting piers. The Widow's Tears was a sagging tavern, its sign faded, its windows dark. The air smelled of salt and decay, and the rain muffled our steps as we approached. My revolver was in my hand, the cold metal steadying my nerves. If it's a trap, I whispered, we're walking right in. Holmes's smile was thin. Then we spring it, Watson. The order's weak, desperate. This is our chance to cut deeper. The tavern's door was unlocked, creaking as we entered. Inside, the air was thick with mildew, the bar deserted, tables overturned. A single candle burned in the corner where a figure sat, cloaked, head bowed. My heart leapt. Miss V? But as we approached, the figure raised their head, revealing a woman older with gray hair and eyes like steel. Not Miss V. You're Holmes, she said, her voice low, cracked with age. She said you'd come. Holmes sat across from her, his face calm but alert. Miss V sent you. Who are you, and what's the widow's lament? The woman's lips twitched, a bitter smile. I'm Mary Crane, Elias's sister. The order took everything from us. The lament's mine for what they've done. Miss V came to me, wounded but alive 2 nights ago. She's hiding, but she left this. She slid a folded paper across the table, marked with the circle and cross. I kept my revolver ready, scanning the shadows. Where is she? And what does the order want? Mary's eyes darkened. The order's breaking, but their last leader, a man called Blackwood, is rallying them. He's at a warehouse nearby, planning to flee with their gold. Miss V wants you to stop him. The paper, it's a map. Holmes unfolded it, revealing a rough sketch of Wapping's docks, an X marking, a warehouse by the river's bend. Blackwood, he said, his voice low. The final head. We end this tonight. We left Mary, who promised to stay hidden, and moved through the rain to the warehouse. The docks were quiet, the mist curling off the water. The warehouse was a hulking shadow, its door ajar, a faint light inside. Holmes signaled for silence, and we slipped in, the air heavy with tar and oil. Voices echoed, low, tense, arguing about ships and gold. We crept closer, hiding behind crates. Blackwood was there, a tall man, gaunt with a voice like gravel. The scarred man stood beside him, arms still bandaged, and 2 others loaded crates onto a cart. We sail tonight, Blackwood said. The order rebuilds abroad. Holmes can't stop us. I gripped my revolver, rage flaring. Holmes whispered, wait for my signal. He tossed a pebble, the sound drawing their eyes. The scarred man turned, and Holmes lunged, tackling him. I fired, hitting a crate, and chaos erupted. Blackwood drew a pistol, but I shot first, grazing his hand, and he dropped it, cursing. The other 2 charged, but Holmes was faster, tripping one, while I clubbed the other with my revolver. Blackwood ran for the door, but Miss V appeared, her knife flashing, blocking his path. No more, she said, her voice raw, her side bandaged, but her eyes fierce. Blackwood lunged, but she sidestepped, and Holmes pinned him, binding his hands. The scarred man groaned, out cold, and the others were down. Miss V leaned against a crate, panting. It's over, she said. Blackwood's the last. Holmes studied her, his face unreadable. You're alive. Why hide? She met his gaze. I had to be sure. The order took my family, my life. I wanted them broken, but I needed to trust you. We handed Blackwood and the scarred man to Lestrade's men, summoned by a runner Holmes sent. The warehouse's gold and papers were seized, more nails in the order's coffin. Miss V vanished again, her knife left behind, a silent goodbye. Back at 221B, the rain eased, the city quieter. Holmes sat by the fire, the order's papers burned to ash. "They're done, Watson," he said, "for now, but secrets like theirs never die." I nodded, my revolver back in its drawer. The order was broken, but London's shadows held more, waiting for us to chase them. Chapter 20. The last echo, the winter rain, had eased to a drizzle, casting a soft sheen over London's gaslit streets, as Sherlock Holmes and I sat in the familiar warmth of 221B Baker Street. It was a week since our final clash in Wapping, where we'd brought down Blackwood, the last leader of the Order of the Cross, and handed him and the scarred man to Scotland Yard. The air smelled of coal fire and Mrs. Hudson's fresh tea, but a quiet tension lingered like the aftertaste of a storm. My arm was nearly healed, the bruise from the scarred man's cane a faint shadow, though my shoulder still twinged when I moved too fast. My revolver rested in its drawer, untouched but ready, a silent sentinel. The order's collapse was front-page news, with arrests rippling through London's elite, but Miss V's knife, left behind in the warehouse, sat on Holmes's desk, a sharp reminder of her fleeting presence and uncertain fate. Holmes leaned back in his chair, pipe in hand, his sharp eyes scanning a letter from Inspector Lestrade. "The Yard's raids are bearing fruit, Watson," he said, his voice calm but edged with focus. "Haverford's manor yielded more papers, and Blackwood's talking, names, hideouts, even foreign ties. The Order's network is unraveling." I sipped my tea, the warmth easing my nerves. "And the public? The Times keeps printing Reddington stories. People are angry. Lords, bankers, even a bishop arrested. But is it enough?" Holmes's lips twitched, a faint smile. "Enough? The Order's power was in its secrecy. Exposed, they're bleeding out. But shadows linger, Watson. Men like Blackwood don't build empires alone." Dr. Elias Crane was now in protective custody, his testimony sealing the Order's fate. Thomas Reddington, safe but guarded, was hailed as a hero, though he rode under police watch. Mary Crane, Elias's sister, had vanished after Wapping, likely hiding from any lingering Order loyalists. But Miss V, her survival, her brief alliance, her lavender-scented note, haunted me. Was she free or still running? A sharp knock broke my thoughts. Mrs. Hudson entered, her face uneasy, holding a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "For you, Mr. Holmes." No name, just left at the door. Holmes took it, his fingers brushing the string. A faint scent of lavender drifted up, and my heart quickened. He cut the string, revealing a folded note in a small brass locket, engraved with a circle and cross. The note, in the same sharp script as before, read, "The echo fades, but the song remains. Look to the spire's shadow, where the truth rests. Farewell." I stared, my mind racing. Miss V again. She's alive, Holmes. But what's this spire? Holmes opened the locket, revealing a tiny sketch, a church spire, unmistakable as St. Bride's on Fleet Street. "The spire's shadow," he murmured. "A final clue, Watson. Miss V's tying up her own loose ends." I frowned, uneasy. Why now? The Order's done. What truth is left? Holmes stood, grabbing his coat. Perhaps her truth. She betrayed the Order, but her past is a riddle. St. Bride's is close, let's find out. We left 221B. The drizzle cold on our faces as we walked to Fleet Street. St. Bride's Church rose above the city, its spire a sharp silhouette against the gray sky. The air smelled of wet stone and ink, the nearby presses humming faintly. The church was quiet, its doors unlocked, the interior dim with candlelight. Holmes moved to the base of the spire, where a small chapel held a stone plaque. Names of parishioners long dead. "There," he said, pointing to a faint circle and cross, carved in the corner. He pressed it and a hollow click sounded. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a leather pouch heavy with papers. Inside were letters, personal, in Miss V's hand, her real name, Victoria Langley, written across them. They told a story. A young woman recruited by the order, her family ruined by their schemes, her years of loyalty turning to vengeance. I read, my heart heavy. She was one of them, Holmes. But she planned this, helping us, exposing them. Why leave it here? Holmes's eyes softened, rare for him. Her farewell, Watson. She's done, free at last, but she wanted us to know. The truth rests here, her truth, not the orders. A soft creak came from the nave. I spun, hand on my revolver, but it was only a verger, lighting candles. No scarred man, no Blackwood, just the quiet of a church. She's gone, isn't she? I said, my voice low. Holmes nodded, tucking the pouch into his coat. For now. Victoria Langley's a ghost again, and I suspect she prefers it that way. We left St. Bride's, the drizzle easing, the city alive with its usual clamor. Back at 221B, Holmes filed the letters away, the locket on his desk beside Miss V's knife. The order's echo fades, he said, lighting his pipe. But London's full of songs, Watson. We'll hear another soon. I sat by the fire, the weight of our fight lifting, though the scars remained. The order was broken, Miss V was free, and the city's shadows were quieter, for now. I smiled, knowing Holmes was right. Another mystery waited, and we'd chase it, as always. Chapter 21. A new thread. The winter chill had settled over London, the streets of Baker Street glistening with frost under the pale glow of gas lamps. It was late afternoon, a week since Sherlock Holmes and I had uncovered Miss V's final truth. At St. Bride's Church, her letters revealing her as Victoria Langley, a woman broken and rebuilt by the Order of the Cross's cruelty. The fire in 221B crackled, its warmth battling the cold seeping through the windows, but a restless energy filled the room. My shoulder was nearly healed, the aches of our battles with the order fading, though my revolver stayed close, tucked, in its drawer. The city was still reeling from the Times' expose, with trials of lords and bankers dominating the headlines. But a quiet unease lingered, like a melody half-heard. Holmes sat at his desk, his sharp eyes scanning a pile of newspapers, his pipe sending thin curls of smoke into the air. The order's collapse was nearly complete, Lord Haverford in prison, Blackwood's confessions unraveling their foreign ties, Dr. Elias Crane's testimony sealing their fate. Yet Holmes's restlessness told me the case wasn't fully closed. The order's gone, Watson, he'd said yesterday, but its ripples remain. Men like that leave traces, debts, promises, enemies. I set down my tea, the cup warm in my hands. You're expecting trouble, aren't you? The scarred man's still out there, maybe others. Holmes's lips twitched, a faint smile. The scarred man's a loose end, but not our only concern. The order's fall has left a void, and London's underbelly doesn't stay empty long. Someone's already moving to fill it. A sharp rap at the door broke the quiet. Mrs. Hudson entered, her face tight, holding a crumpled note. This was slipped under the door, Mr. Holmes. No one saw who left it. Holmes took the note, his fingers brushing the rough paper. No lavender this time, just ink and a faint smell of tobacco. He unfolded it, his eyes narrowing as he read. The Ravens, shadow stirs again. Meet me at the old mill, Rotherhithe, midnight, come alone. It was signed with a single initial. S.I. leaned forward, my heart quickening. Another riddle? Could it be the scarred man, luring us out? Holmes shook his head, setting the note down. Not his style. Too subtle, too clean. This is someone new or someone hiding. The Raven's shadow, perhaps a nod to the order's symbol or something else. Rotherhithe's a smuggler's haunt, Watson. We'll go, but not alone. Frowned, the memory of Miss V's clues sharp. What if it's her, Victoria Langley, back with another game? Holmes's gaze was steady. Possible, but unlikely. She's free, her fight done. This feels different. A new thread, pulling at the order's grave. We spent the day preparing, Holmes cross-referencing maps of Rotherhithe while I checked. My revolver, loading it with fresh rounds. The old mill was a derelict husk by the Thames, its wheel long broken, a perfect spot for secrets. Or traps. "We take no chances," Holmes said, slipping a knife into his coat. "The order's dead, but its ghosts are restless." Night fell, the city wrapped in a thin mist, the air sharp with frost and river mud. We took a cab to Rotherhithe, the docks quiet, their warehouses dark and looming. The old mill stood alone, its silhouette jagged against the moonless sky. The Thames lapped nearby, its rhythm steady but ominous. I gripped my revolver, my breath visible in the cold. "If it's a trap," I whispered. "They picked a good spot." Holmes nodded, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Stay close, Watson. Whoever S is, they're watching." We approached the mill, its door hanging off its hinges, the interior black as pitch. Holmes lit a small lantern, its glow revealing a floor littered with broken crates and cobwebs. A soft creak came from above, and I raised my revolver, heart pounding. Holmes signaled for silence, leading us up a rickety staircase to a loft, where a single figure stood by a cracked window, cloaked, their face hidden. "You're punctual, Mr. Holmes," the figure said, voice low, male, with a faint accent. "Irish, perhaps." "I'm S. No need for the gun, Dr. Watson. I'm no enemy." Holmes stepped closer, his lantern casting light on the man's face. Young, with a sharp jaw and eyes that darted like a fox's. "Then state your business, S. The Raven's shadow. What is it?" S lowered his hood, revealing a scar on his cheek, not like the scarred man's, but smaller, older. "The order's gone, but its work isn't. Their gold, their secrets. Someone's claiming them. A man called Kellen, an outsider. Not one of theirs, but hungry for their power. He's at the docks building a new network. I want him stopped." I lowered my revolver but kept it ready. "Why us? Why not the police?" S's smile was bitter. "Kellen's bought men in the yard like the order did. You broke them, Holmes. You can break him. The Raven's shadow. It's what they're calling his crew after the order's symbol." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "And your stake? You're no altruist." S hesitated, then pulled a locket from his coat, brass like Miss V's with a circle and cross. "My sister was one of them, like your Miss V. She died for their lies. I want Kellen's head, but I can't do it alone." Holmes took the locket, studying it. "Where is he, and what's his plan?" S handed over a folded map, marked with a warehouse near the mill. "Tonight he's meeting buyers, smugglers, thieves. He's selling the order's last gold. Their lists of names. Stop him, and you cut his roots." A sudden crash below made a spin, the door slamming, boots on the stairs. "You were followed," I hissed, raising my revolver. Cursed, drawing a knife. "Not me. Kellen's men, maybe." Holmes doused the lantern, plunging us into darkness. Shadows moved below, voices low and sharp. "They're here," one growled. "Find them." We slipped to a back stair, S leading the way. A shot rang. Out splintering wood, and I fired back, the flash lighting up a man's face. Not the scarred man, but hard, with a pistol. He fell, clutching his leg, and we ran, bursting out a side door into the mist. The docks were a maze, crates and ropes looming, but shouts followed, closing in. Holmes pulled us behind a stack of barrels, his knife ready. "Kellen's men," he whispered. "S, you're with us now. Lead us to that warehouse." S nodded, his face pale but set. We moved through the mist, the warehouse ahead, its windows glowing faintly. Inside, voices argued, Kellen's, loud and commanding, bartering gold for loyalty. Holmes signaled, and we crept to a side door, my heart pounding. This was no trap, but a new fight. The order's echo had a name, Kellen, and London's shadows were stirring again. I gripped my revolver, ready for whatever came next. Chapter 22. The Raven's Shadow. The mist clung to Rotherhithe's docks, a cold shroud muffling the creak of moored boats and the distant lap of the Thames. It was nearing 1 in the morning, the air sharp with frost and the acrid tang of tar. My heart pounded from our escape from the old mill where S, our new ally, had revealed the rise of Kellen, a man seizing the order of the Cross's fallen empire, My revolver, gripped tightly, was warm in my hand, its weight anchoring me against the fear of pursuit. My shoulder twinged, a faint echo of past fights, but adrenaline dulled the ache. Sherlock Holmes moved ahead, a silent shadow, his knife glinting faintly in the dim light of a shuttered lantern. The scarred young man with the brass locket, kept pace, his eyes darting like a hunted animal's. The map he'd given us, marked with a warehouse near the river's bend, was our guide to Kellen's lair. Holmes paused behind a stack of crates, his sharp eyes scanning the warehouse ahead. Its windows glowed with a sickly yellow light, and low voices leaked out, Kellen's barking orders, mixed with the gruff tones of his buyers. "He's selling the orders gold," Holmes whispered, his voice low as the mist. "And their lists, names of allies, traitors, debts. If he succeeds, he'll rebuild what we destroyed." I crouched beside him, my breath visible in the cold. Says Kellen's got men in the yard. We can't trust Lestrade this time. It's just us." Nodded, his knife ready. "Kellen's crew is small but vicious. Smugglers, thieves, ex-ordermen. He's promising them power like the Order did. Stop him here, or he'll spread." Holmes's gaze was steel. "Then we stop him. You know the layout. Any weak points?" Pointed to a side door, half hidden by barrels. "There, it's unguarded, leads to the main floor. But Kellen's got at least 6 men, maybe more. He's paranoid, keeps a pistol close." We slipped through the mist, the side door creaking as Holmes worked his lockpick. Inside, the air was thick with oil and damp wood, the warehouse a cavern of crates and shadows. The voices were clearer now, coming from a cleared space lit by lanterns. Kellen stood at a table, a lean man with a predator's grin, his dark hair slicked back, a pistol at his hip. Around him were 5 men, hard types with knives and clubs, and a 6th, cloaked, face hidden, counting gold coins into sacks. Stacks of papers, likely the order's list, sat beside the gold. I tightened my grip on my revolver, my heart racing. "That cloaked one," I whispered. "Could be the scarred man or someone new." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Possible. We need to disrupt them, scatter the buyers. Create a diversion. Watson, cover me." Nodded, slipping into the shadows. A moment later, a crate toppled with a crash, drawing shouts. "Who's there?" Kellen barked, his pistol drawn. The buyers turned, weapons ready, and Holmes moved, swift as a cat, toward the table. I followed, revolver aimed, staying low. Through another crate, the noise echoing, and the cloaked man bolted, vanishing behind a stack. Kellen fired into the dark, cursing, while his men spread out, hunting. Holmes reached the table, grabbing a stack of papers, but Kellen spun, his pistol aimed. "Holmes," he snarled. "You're a dead man." I fired, the shot grazing Kellen's arm, and he staggered, his gun clattering. Holmes tackled him, pinning him to the floor while I covered the others. 2 men charged, but appeared, his knife flashing, slashing one's arm. The other swung a club, catching my shoulder, and I grunted, firing again, hitting his leg. He fell, howling. The buyers scattered, grabbing gold and running for the doors. The cloaked man was gone, his absence chilling. Holmes bound Kellen's hands with rope from his pack, his face grim. "Your Raven's shadow fades," he said. "The order's done, and so are you." Kellen laughed, blood dripping from his arm. "You think this ends it? The order's lists, names, secrets, they're out there. Someone'll pick up the pieces." Essing stepped forward, his knife at Kellen's throat. "Not you," he growled, his scar pale in the lantern light. "For my sister." Holmes pulled back. "Not yet. He talks first. The lists. Where are they going?" Kellen spat, defiant. "The cloaked one. He's got copies. You'll never catch him." A shout came from outside. Boots, voices. Not Kellen's men, but others, organized. "Police," a voice called. "Drop your weapons." I froze, my revolver still raised. Had betrayed us? Or had Kellen's yard contacts turned? Holmes dragged Kellen to his feet. "Move, Watson, the side door." We ran, behind us, as lanterns flashed outside. Shots rang out. Not at us, but at the fleeing buyers. The police weren't Kellen's. Someone had tipped them off. We burst into the mist, the warehouse's glow fading. S led us through a maze of alleys, the shouts growing distant. We stopped, near the river, panting, the papers safe in Holmes's coat. Kellen glared, silent now, his arm bleeding. "The cloaked man," I gasped. "He's got the lists. Could be the scarred man finishing what Blackwood started." Holmes nodded, his face hard. "Or a new player. The Order's shadow lingers, Watson. We'll find him." S wiped his knife, his eyes dark. "I'm with you. Kellen's down. But the lists are blood. My sister's ghost demands it." We left. Kellen tied in an alley. A note pinned to him for the police, anonymous but enough to ensure his arrest. Back at 221B, dawn was breaking, the city waking to frost and news of dockside raids. Holmes spread the stolen papers, lists of names, some familiar from the Order, others new. "Kellen was a spark," he said, lighting his pipe. "The cloaked man's the flame. We hunt him next." I sank into my chair, revolver on the table, my shoulder aching. The Order was dead, but its echoes, Kellen, the cloaked man, the lists, were a new web. London's shadows never slept, and neither would we.